Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Tonight we're pleased to be hosting Oxford University's mathematician, Professor John Lennox, and acclaimed journalist, Christopher Hitchens, in what I'm sure will be a memorable evening for all of us. Of course, as most of you know, this event was originally slotted to be between author and political observer Dinesh D'Souza and Mr. Hitchens. But due to a major family surgery in India yesterday, Mr. D'Souza could not join us. Professor Lennox, however, was planning to be in the very seats that you now occupy, and so when we discovered that, we asked him if he was willing to participate rather than spectate, and he has graciously agreed. It was very providential. Or, if you prefer Mr. Hitchens' perspective, it was almost providential. Almost. I had to get that in there, Mr. Hitchens. I'm going to get a lot of mileage out of that. We also thank Fixed Point Foundation for loaning Professor Lennox to us this evening and helping us promote the event, since he actually was in town for a Fixed Point function. Now, with the help of more people that can be named, Dr. Andy Westmoreland, Dr. Brad Creed, University Relations Department, student involvement, university fellows, many volunteers, and our own tireless group of officers, just to name a few, we are now pleased to be hosting a very high-profile event on a very important topic. Indeed, what topic could be more important? And this is the Socratic Club's entire purpose, to thoughtfully engage and explore life's so-called great questions. I will state publicly that the Socratic Club is a Christian organization, modeled after the Oxford organization of the 1940s and 50s, which C.S. Lewis presided over. But just because we have an opinion on these issues does not mean that we are
somewhat consistent.
Well, it's either arbitrary or not arbitrary. Which is it?
So, I understand now what the technique is. So,
Emily,
we're going to
how's
get
it
into
going?
this presuppositionalism, right? You wanted to start that conversation?
Welcome.
Is it arbitrary or not
I
arbitrary?
can't answer you yes or no like this because I understand how the trap works.
Is your principle one that you use consistently?
Past presuppositional beliefs, yes it is.
Okay, so you're consistent in applying rational justification for your ultimate beliefs. Is that right?
Past presuppositional beliefs, yes it is.
I don't know what that means. Okay, that's more verbal misdirection. Do you require rational justification for your most ultimate beliefs?
capable of objectivity. If an idea cannot properly take its stand in the marketplace of ideas without collapsing, if it cannot survive without constantly being guarded from outside attacks, then it is not worth believing in the first place. We, however, think that Christianity can take its stand, and it is with such confidence that we invite thoughtful opposition, such as Mr. Hitchens, to engage us in what we hope will be a very fruitful dialogue. C.S. Lewis once noted, in any fairly large and talkative community, such as a university, there is always the danger that those who think alike should gravitate together into coteries, where they will henceforth encounter the opposition only in the emasculated form of rumor, and that the outsiders say thus and thus. The absent are easily refuted, complacent dogmatism thrives, and differences of opinion are embittered by group hostility. Each group here...
Well, it's either arbitrary or not arbitrary. Which is it?
So, I understand now what the technique is. So
he understands what the technique is,
right? You wanted to start that conversation.
Is it arbitrary or not arbitrary?
I can't answer you yes or no like this because I understand how the trap works.
Is your principle one that you use consistently?
Past presuppositional beliefs, yes, it is.
Okay, so you're consistent in applying rational justification for your ultimate beliefs. Is that right?
Past presuppositional beliefs, yes, it is.
I don't know what that means. Okay, that's more verbal misdirection. Do you require rational justification for your most ultimate beliefs?
Are you going to let me to explain this, or you're going to keep talking over me?
Well, I'd like
He'd just like to take a moment to welcome every single one of you to a day of thought, to a day of true introspective debate and comparison in the language, the dialect, the dialectic. And folks, I think you know exactly what time it is. Thank you for being here. I'm aronmsound. Let's go.
not the best, but the worst that the other groups can say. Christian though he was, I think that this is a sentiment which any thoughtful person can agree with, and it is exactly the problem we are trying to combat. We want to bring the best of both sides to bear. I think you will agree with me that we have done fairly well this evening. We have not put the worst of each side out here, but rather some of the best minds that each has to offer. It is with this in mind that we hope you will listen carefully and respectfully
the best
to what
minds
each man has
we
to
could
say
offer.
this
Can you
evening.
imagine that?
Finally, before I turn over the floor, I would like to remind you that filming and flash photography are prohibited. Fixed Point Foundation
It
is
seems
filming
so
the event.
popular
And if
nowadays
you
to
would like
offer
to get
whatever,
footage of the event, you may contact
whatever's
them
available,
afterwards
and I'm
or
going to
on
say
their
that
website.
maybe
I will now
it's
turn over the
time
floor to
to
this evening's moderator, Dr. Christopher Metris.
start
Dr. Metris is a professor of English here at Sanford.
moving our
the
way
director of
backwards,
the
but
recently
that's
founded University
neither here nor
Fellows
there.
Program, and recent winner of the Making
back
Teaching
and
Award,
forth of
which
this
he was very
conversation.
deserving, if I may say so.
No, I'm
He's also
going
the
to.
faculty sponsor of the Socratic Club and something of a mentor
I'm more
to myself
interested
personally. If my classes have been any indicator at all, I think that I can say he has
in
the
the
gift of
comparison
moderating in the
today of
Socratic
how we,
style, which happens to be very
how we
fitting for
communicate
his role this evening.
and what's being
and it is
lost.
with that I turn the floor over to Dr. Chris Metris.
Hello, everybody.
Try to get us going.
No. That's just me. That's just me. Thank you. No. Thank you.
Thank
No,
you
I
very much,
appreciate you all.
Michael. And on behalf
And
of the
that was
Sanford-
for him. That was for him. Oh, damn. All right. Well, that. Anyhow, I'm aronmsound. Welcome to the show. This is the show known as Lookup, where I interject myself into a conversation that not a single person asked me to be a part of, and that's okay. What I do is I tend to take the conversation somewhere they weren't expected to be, somewhere the conversation didn't expect to go, or the people involved in the conversation didn't expect to take it. I look at things a little differently. And in that way, I wanted to share a series of shows about the missing, ability to communicate that I think is so important in getting across ideas, in changing the world, bit by bit, seed by seed, as you know I say. Because I think we're here to talk about and release ourselves from the mental prisons that might hold us to any given day, to any given propaganda or attempt to undermine your well-being and my well-being and the well-being of people we don't even know. I mean, it seems like a large leap to some, but frankly, it's the way these things begin. By dismantling the ability to communicate between any parties. So today I'm challenging thought. I'm challenging because I'm going back to Christopher Hitchens and John Lennox in a historic debate about God. And the concept is whether or not God is great. And in comparison, I am sharing with you another debate between someone named Darth and he who has come to be known as the Smurf here. And, I started out with a little comparison just so you could hear just like the language difference, just in the opening and the introduction, get an idea what's going on. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me allow the moderator his space.
faculty, administration, and staff, I welcome everybody to campus.
By the way, thanks for being here. And
Now, before we begin the actual debate, I want to briefly and very briefly
don't forget,
introduce
if you're
our
new,
speakers,
and
then
make
go
sure to
over
hit
the
the
ground
button
rules
and
for
like and
this evening.
subscribe. Thank you.
Now, our first
And
participant
likes
sitting
help get us into the
to
big
my
old
left is
thumbs.
Mr. Christopher Hitchens.
Big old thumbs help
Mr.
us
Hitchens,
get
a journalist,
into
a literary
press
critic,
the button,
political
both hands if you
commentator,
can.
who is one of the
and
most
likes are
widely
free.
recognized
Likes are
public
free. You know it's not free.
intellectuals today. Although he's the author of 17 books, he is perhaps best known
it's
for his
not
most
free.
recent book, God is Not Great,
Thought
How Religion Poisons
nowadays.
Everything, an
Thought
international
is not free.
bestseller
I
that, among other
challenge the
things,
idea
mounts
that
a vigorous
thought
challenge
is
to
allowed
religious
to be
faith and
free
its role in contemporary
in the
global
world
society.
of the debate.
An independent thinker who resists classification, he has carved out a unique place for
Independent
himself
thinking.
in America's current political and social landscape. Please join me in welcoming to Birmingham, Mr. Christopher Hitchens.
Yes, sir. If you're not familiar The late Christopher Hitchens is a historic thinker of the late 20th and mid-20th century. He challenged the ideas of God. He challenged the ideas of the mythos. He challenged the ideas that America was great. And thank goodness for him, because if we didn't have these alternatives, if we didn't have, well, comprehensive thinkers thinking outside the box, we might not be able to move forward. We might not be able to find better ground by thinking outside of the box, comprehending something we may not have before, because it's so easy to listen to our friends, listen to the folks that agree with us, and just keep moving in our little, mental prison. Even if we didn't mean to. Even if we, sorry, I need to adjust the mic. Even if we didn't mean to. It's just much more comfortable in the tribe, in-group. And I think it's important to note that. I think it's important to challenge our biases, to question our thought, and yet to have reverence, appreciation, love, and see all of the middle ground. There's no reason we shouldn't. It allows us to be a broader, healthier mind. That's my premise. And that's why I'm sharing a very challenging topic about God. Whether God is great, whether God is real. And I want to also, at the same time, challenge the language that we've lost. Challenge the ideas we've lost. Challenge the cogent capability, the ability to have a discourse that's not fully fucked up by, well, linguistics or paying attention to all the language that doesn't make an engaging conversation. Arguing over what a word means. Taking positions that don't mean anything. Rather, a position that specifically means that you can deflect or evade. That's the manner of thinking now. That it's a game. Like if you avoid the shots, you can still say you're taking part, instead of allowing for engagement. And I think it's a problematic situation. That's how people end up avoiding or denying that, well, atrocities are happening. Because as you well know, I say things like Voltaire's quote about they who would sell you an idiocy would also sell you an atrocity. It's happened. It's happened many times throughout history. I'm gonna, put my phone up here so I can see. It's a slow day today. It's quiet. It's probably because I'm doing a very heady topic. That's what happens. That's what happens when you don't follow the trends. I don't give a flip. You know that. You folks know that. I'm over here playing dance music in the middle of the day. Anyhow, let's get into this. They've just introduced Christopher Hitchens.
Our second participant this evening is Professor John Lennox.
Yes, indeed, Emily.
Dr. Lennox is Professor of Mathematics at Oxford University and Fellow in Mathematics.
Speaking of which, happy holidays to anybody who's served. Thank you for being here. And also, happy holidays to those who haven't. And, good Monday to you. Thanks for being here. I rely on you folks to be interested in the topics, and I'm so proud and glad that I do have an audience that is. And I try to design the show in most cases so that it's watchable, whether you watch it in the live or you watch it later. And that's important, I think, in the scope of things. And there's another creator out there who pointed it out, and I took that constructive criticism to heart, because they did say something about making content for history. And I thought that was fairly profound, because it's true. If you're going to make some content, let's remember what you're doing. Let's have an arc. Let's have more than just a storyline to create drama, because drama is drama, right? It's daytime TV. Let's talk about history. Let's talk about people who affected us and the changes. And look at these things, take them into consideration and try to do and be better. That's all I'm saying. That's all we can do. That's the theme of the show, isn't it? To try to help people out of the mental prisons or help ourselves to avoid them. And by the way, the call-in line is open in case you have anything to share. If you disagree or you hear something that you don't like, I'm not gonna stop you from sharing your ideas or thoughts because some of this stuff is, not gonna lie, real heady. Or if you just have a question. Ooh, that was a boo DJ. Boo DJ on that one. I'm sorry. Cut a little too early. I was excited. Oh.
Of Science at Green Templeton College, Oxford. Early in his career, as senior scholar at Emmanuel College, Cambridge, Professor Lennox attended the last lectures of C.S. Lewis, and since that time, he has emerged as a Christian apologist in his own right. Although his speaking engagements have taken him all over the world, he is perhaps best known to Birmingham audiences for his role in the God delusion debate at UAB back in the fall of 2007. At this event, Dr. Lennox debated fellow Oxford professor and leading Darwinist Richard Dawkins on the existence of God, a debate that not only surprised many in the international academic community.
Well, it's either arbitrary or not arbitrary. Which is it?
So I understand now what the technique is. So
he understands what the technique is,
right? You want to
not the thought.
Conversation?
Is it arbitrary or not arbitrary?
I can't answer you yes or no like this because I understand
not
how the trap works.
Is your principle one that
it's in a conversation or debate?
Past presuppositional beliefs, yes, it is.
By the way, past presupposition, English, past presuppositional ideas are ideas that you have learned innately through the environment and your experiences and then just assume are true. This is basically saying, built-in ideas, stuff that you just took for granted. That's an easy way to say it. These are things that I learned and just took for granted, even if they're not true. It's an easy way to say that by flipping it around into fancy dialectic or jargon, and it's evasive. And it's a very piss-poor debate tactic. And one of the things you'll notice is that evasion is never used in the Hutchins and Lennox. I always forget because I've been looking at many of these things. There's, by the way, there's a lot of great debates out there with great minds who've really written and thought about these subjects, who are experts, who aren't just gamers, who may have an agenda. By the way, this is from a period just 4 years ago where he was still considered right-wing or conservative, and no blue hair. So, and no game in the window. Isn't that interesting?
Consistent in applying rational justification for your ultimate beliefs. Is that right?
You can really see what's going on in his eyes.
Beliefs? Yes, it is.
I don't know what that means.
Prior beliefs, yes, that's an easier way to say that more simply.
Do you require rational justification?
His existing beliefs.
Ultimate beliefs.
Are you going to let me to explain this, or you're going to keep talking over me?
Well, I'd like a non-evasive response.
What a wow. You're going to let me explain this, or you're going to keep talking over me?
Oh, I don't know what that means.
Can I explain it?
Yeah, sure.
So the foundation of which we build our reason and our logic on is on presupposed beliefs. So presupposed beliefs such as I experience things, or causality exists, or I can create logical, rational statements. These are things that are, by definition...
By the way, I want you to notice that...
for its spirited collegiality.
He's reading...
But also help to set an example for the
possibilities
of cordial but productive debate across ideological lines.
Huh.
Please join me in welcoming back to Birmingham, Dr. John Lennox.
Across ideological lines? Oh my goodness. This should be good.
Now, I know we're all ready to go, but I do need to say a few words about the format tonight. It's outlined a little bit in your program.
Oh, this is exciting. By the way, there's a format. If you didn't know, formats are very important to discourse when it comes to, comprehensive, evaluative, structured, and then, what's the word for it? Oh yeah, intelligent, intellectual discussion. It's very important. Timing, the ability to set a plan, have your premise, your fact, your summary, your defense, and your debate. It's all very important when it comes to actual debate, when it comes to actual discourse, when it comes to getting somewhere and by moving the dial between a couple people, or for the greater good of humanity, just having that discourse, that language, that discussion proliferate as an idea, or to have it influence the discussion at large. These are the things, this is the way that society moves forward, frankly. Speaking of which, gotta move it somewhere. Now, when we think about God, first off, before I let this go forward, I want us to remember that we all have a position on this, essentially. We just can't live with ourselves in life without adjusting in one way or the other to the idea that there is something beyond us, however you see it. I'm not here to endorse either or any of these positions. Rather, I want to look at these ideas and create a melody that allows us to all sit in harmony. I mean, come on. How much better would it be? If we could just do that for each other. Anyhow, because I can play that melody all day long, or play melodically with this stuff, because it's about having a jazzy discourse, having something go back and forth and being part of it in the moment, and being engaged in that moment, not being bored by it, but rather being engaged. Right? That's the way I look at it. Maybe that's just me. I hope not. Either way, I'm trying to influence you so that we stop with that bullshit, right?
We'll begin with opening remarks. Each speaker will be allotted 15 minutes uninterrupted
a plan
to offer
Isn't that
these
amazing?
opening remarks. As the speaker nears the end of his allotted time, I will signal him with the statement 1 minute remaining. Near the end of that minute, I will signal again 30 seconds remaining. And should the speaker continue on, I will be put in the unenviable position of having to cut him off and turn the floor over to his opponent. The same will happen at the 10-minute time allotted for rebuttal. Again, as we near the time, I will tell the speakers of 1 minute to go. Then I'll remind them of 30 seconds to go. And then I will once again, if they keep going, be put in the unenviable position of having to cut one of our speakers off. I spoke to both of the
Don't do
gentlemen
that.
backstage.
God, that
I
would
told
suck.
them how much I dislike being unenvied. So they have assured me that they will stay and act like perfect gentlemen and stay within their allotted time. Now, the
Can you
rebuttal
imagine
period will
that?
be followed by
Can you
questions
imagine
from the
debaters
audience.
acting like perfect?
But we're going to do this a bit
kind
different
people?
than you might have done in another kind of discussion like this. We do not have microphones where you can queue up. Instead, we handed note cards to you this evening when you entered. If at any time during the discussion between the opening comments or the allotted time for rebuttal, you have a question, please write that question down on that index card. During the break between speakers, say when Mr. Hitchens has finished his 15-minute opening remarks, if you wish, pass your question to your right.
So the audience
And we
is
have
getting a
volunteers who
chance
will
to
pick up
actually,
those questions
put
in
in
the
as
aisle
well.
between
Take part.
segments. Those questions will be put in order for me, and then I will take
I don't
those
know if we'll have
questions
time to get
and
that.
ask
That
them of
takes
our
like
chief
an
guest this
hour,
evening.
by the way, for them to ask the questions.
So, without any further delay, let's
Please.
begin our debate.
Awesome.
And Mr. Hitchens has the honor of opening first.
Hey!
Thank you, sir.
I hope he was half-cocked drunk. I think he was. He was always apparently very drunk. Yes, it is rare for the
Let me begin by thanking all of you,
positive conversation with
ladies
rules,
and gentlemen,
right?
for coming. By thanking you, Christopher, for that suspiciously terse, grudging introduction. And by confessing that I'll have difficulty when I get back to the north, persuading my smart friends in New York that there's a Socratic society in Birmingham, Alabama at all. I mean, I told my publishers when I started, I want to begin in Dixie. I don't want to do the usual book tour. I want to take the campaign through the South. And they said, but why would you want to do that? I mean, who doesn't know that it's one long white sheet toga party? Crosses crackling merrily on the lawn.
Oh, yeah.
The night breeze.
That's what he's talking
Later on, they repair to an illegal still or hooch to reflect gloatingly on their
He's
multiple
being
offenses
sarcastic.
against chastity. Particular emphasis on the loss of virginity with domestic or even semi-wild animals.
about. Oh, shit. God damn.
So it's always a pleasure for me to go back to the liberal consensus and say to them, you know, you'd be surprised by how quite a lot of that isn't really true. I stick up for you guys when I can, I really do. Now, I'm guessing that tonight I'm not speaking to a largely or predominantly Muslim or Jewish audience. If I was, believe me, I would try and find a way of unsettling you. I'm guessing that those of you who are believers
by
are
the
probably
way,
of the Christian kind.
Very much an anti-Zionist.
As you know, the atheist
Christian.
position is the following. That of the many hundreds, if not thousands, of gods and religions that humanity has
very
invented in its time,
religion, basically.
we have three, roughly, and only three, not roughly, only three alternatives in considering them. One is that all of them are true. One is that all of them are false. And the other is that only one of them is true. The first proposition...
Okay, so what's beautiful about him is that he is such a skilled orator that he's already lulled you into forgetting that he's setting his premise. And he's woven it into the comedy, into the story. This is what is lost nowadays. The ability to actually take the audience on a journey that leads the mind so that when it takes the hooks out of the experience, it gives the spirit something juicy to hold on to. Whether you want to like it or not, or whether you like the concept, or whether it doesn't really matter. You can hold on to it, you can observe it, you could really look at it, because it's been given, well, a structure, a form, and a wonderful set of, or series of thoughts that attach to it. Anyhow, sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on something else.
Is self-evidently absurd. They can't conceivably all be true. Indeed, there are mutually exclusive forms of Christianity, as just to take only one religion. That all are false seems at least possible. That only one is true is the position, say, of my opponent, Dr. Lennox. I think must be the hardest single position to take. But in the spirit of it, I'll assume Christianity, and I'll just remind you of a novel that probably most of you won't have heard of, but was once very famous. It was called When It Was Dark. Has anyone heard of it or read it?
No.
It was a huge bestseller just before the First World War.
No, for all of us.
By a man called Guy Thorne. And the mise en scène of the novel is this, that news comes from Palestine that a grave has been opened. And in this grave, the stone rolled away from the tomb. On a stone inside is the body of a man who's been scourged, crucified, had a crown of thorns pressed down on his head, and has a terrible wound in his side, an almost perfectly preserved cadaver. And on the news of this terrible archaeological discovery, the world undergoes a complete moral collapse. Because without the resurrection, or with definite proof that there was no such thing, that the resurrection was a fabrication, there's no further moral restraint on humanity. People are coupling like beasts in the streets. They give themselves up to plunder and theft and rape and murder and perjury without conscience. The midnight of civilization falls upon an unhappy world until it's finally discovered that the whole thing was a fabrication put around by sinister Jewish people and journalists and other untrustworthy riffraff as a stunt, and then people can go back to being moral again. Well, you see where, perhaps you can guess where I might be headed with this. In my view, if every one of the gods that have been discredited, instead of only the 2 or 3 left to us that haven't yet been completely shown up as man-made fabrications and joined Thor and Ashtaroth and Quetzalcoatl and the Aztecs and all the others, all of these were proven to be fraudulent and false and man-made, I believe our moral dilemmas would be exactly the ones we face now.
So, not to re-explain his point, but I'm going to summarize what he's just said. It wouldn't matter whether God, in his point of view, exists or not in our society. We would still have the same moral dilemmas. We would still have the same interaction and interpersonal play and politics and money. It would all still be fairly the same, is his argument. Take it as you will. Feel about it as you would. I have my thoughts on the subject, where I could point back at several points in history where, without the actions of religious interplay or warring or such, history might not be quite the same. Now, that is a whataboutism, and it's not factual. It's something that could be. That's a presupposition. And it's based off of a thought, a hypothesis. So it's not for certain. And I'm sorry, one of the producers has just come in with important news. Apparently, snuggles are necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, Homer. Homer is one of the producers here. The director is asleep in the back. So, much of his argument is based in a logical and very rational perception, and it excludes, reasonably so, a historic implication in favor of a mindset that sees the contemplation with respect to human behaviors over time and just assumes that we would behave damn near the same. And it's important to remember that when people are making these, experiments in thought or practices in thought, if they have a decent basis of reality settled into that, we can take them at face value, as opposed to not actually engaging. And I'm going to replay this video one more time. As opposed to not actually engaging with the topic at hand.
Is that an arbitrary principle or a consistent one?
It is somewhat consistent.
Well, it's either arbitrary or not arbitrary. Which is it?
So I understand now what the technique is. So what we're going to get into is presuppositionalism, right? Do you want to just start that conversation?
Is it arbitrary or
No,
not
he's
arbitrary?
trying
I can't answer you
to
yes
talk
or no
about
like this because I
God.
understand
He's
how
trying to
that
talk
works.
about
Is your
beliefs in
principle
God.
one
Do
that
you think
you use
that God is real?
Past
How do you support
presuppositional
that?
beliefs, yes, it is.
So based off
So
of
you're
your
consistent
past
in applying rational
your prior
justification for your ultimate beliefs. Is that right?
beliefs.
Past presuppositional beliefs,
Yes.
yes, it is.
I don't know what that means. Okay, that's more verbal misdirection. Do you require rational justification for your most ultimate
My
beliefs?
chat
Are you
not
going to let me
updating?
explain this, or are you going to keep talking over me?
Well, I'd like just like a
I love that.
non-invasive response.
You gonna let
So
me
the
explain
response
this,
is
or are
past
you gonna just keep
presuppositional
talking
beliefs, yes.
over me?
Oh, I don't know what that means.
There
Can
it
I
is.
explain
It's not updating.
Yeah,
My
sure.
apologies.
So the foundation of which we build our reason and our logic on is on presupposed beliefs. So presupposed beliefs such as I experience things, or causality exists, or I can create logical, rational statements. These are things that are,
Can
by
you, though?
definition, unjustified, that every single person that engages in any sort of argument has to rely on.
Is
So I
that
cannot,
true?
Yes,
How do you know that?
because that's the bounds of what we can prove as human.
Oh,
yes.
okay. So our most foundational mental states don't have a justificatory path.
Correct.
Good. So that necessarily entails the falsity of the Christian God.
It what?
It necessarily follows from that the falsity of the Christian God. Are you aware of that?
Not necessarily. Well, unless your definition of the Christian.
No,
Okay, sure.
necessarily it would.
Oh,
because in the
sure.
Christian
What was that?
worldview,
Actually? Unless
by
his
All of
definition
us,
of
atheists,
of the
agnostic,
Christian God is what?
philosophical, Socratic, or true believer, we would still have to wonder about the purpose of our existence here. We would still have to wonder about the origins of the cosmos and of nature. We would still have to wonder about our duties to one another. We would still have to wonder about how to build the just city, how to reflect on truth and on beauty. All of these dilemmas would remain exactly the way they are, unaltered by any supernatural dimension. And our subject tonight is the supernatural dimension itself, the chieftain of that dimension, the concept of God.
The
So I want to begin by
chieftain of the
clarifying why it
supernatural
is that I
dimension. I
believe there
love
is no
that
such
concept, by the
entity
way.
or
What a
person.
great term.
And I want to go on to say why I'm relieved when I reflect that this is so, why I think it would be horrible if it were true, or otherwise. And I think I'd have to begin with a distinction between theism and deism. Even Thomas Aquinas' famous 5 proofs of the existence of God, for example, are, strictly speaking, hardly theological at all. They're essentially only deistic. They are about first causes, or uncaused potential, or latent causes. They derive the idea of a creator from various gaps and from observation of the rhythms and the patterns of nature and the cosmos, and they postulate that these rhythms and patterns would make no sense without a first cause. In short, they postulate nothing more than the argument from design, which, as you all know, is subject to a refutation that says, well, if there was a designer, then the designer must himself have been designed, and threatens those who offer the case with an infinite regression into chaos.
Did you
However,
notice what's
I
going
would-
on here? By the way, so Lennox is taking notes about what is being said. This is extemporaneous debate. These gentlemen are having conceptual and theoretical and personal belief conversations in front of the public on a stage in real time. And we're not talking about an argument. We're not talking about a screaming match. We're talking about a matching of wits, about a concept to compare and contrast and to make point and to hope to pull one or the other over to your side in one way or the other, even if it's a capitulation to one small point. And between these titans of thought, between Lennox and Hitchens, a small capitulation is a huge win for either side. So I want to play back this cut right here, just to remind you that in the modern day, capitulation
is that an arbitrary principle, or
can be washed away.
It is somewhat consistent.
Is it an arbitrary principle?
Well, it's
somewhat
either
consistent.
Arbitrary or not arbitrary. Which is it?
So I understand now what the technique is. So what we're going to get into is presuppositionalism, right? Do you want to just start that
That is
conversation?
a
Is it
deflection.
arbitrary or not arbitrary?
I can't answer you yes or no like this because I understand how the trap works.
Is your principle
So
one
you
that
lost.
you use
That's a
consistently?
capitulation. He
Past
understands how what.
presuppositional beliefs,
If he
yes.
believes that's a trap, then he's not
So
engaging
you're
in the conversation.
consistent in applying rational justification for your ultimate beliefs. Is that right?
Past presuppositional beliefs, yes, it is.
I don't know what that means. Okay, that's more verbal misdirection. Do you
Yeah, it is.
require
That's for
do
damn
you
sure.
require rational justification for your most ultimate beliefs?
Are you going to let me to explain this, or you're going to keep talking over me?
Deflection
Well, I'd
again.
like just like a non-evasive
It's
response.
non-engagement
So the
in the
response is
conversation
past
itself.
presuppositional beliefs, yes.
All right.
I don't know
Well,
what that
enough of
Can I
that.
explain it?
No. You tried. He gave you the space to explain it. You didn't. Now you want to act like you were explaining it by not explaining it, which is called deflection and evasion. And simply boring.
So
Boring.
it's not possible to
Boring.
refute this argument conclusively.
Boring.
Or finally,
Super boring.
only
Telling
one
you.
can point out, as I
Super,
will,
super
some
duper boring.
gross absurdities and inconsistencies in it. But for this evening, and for the purposes of tonight, why don't I simply grant that it could be true, that there was an original creator, and that that's a good and elegant explanation
Talk
for
about
how at
grace
least
and
the
conversation,
cosmos and
right?
the process of life on Earth, two quite different things, got started. Why don't I just grant the deist his point? After all, in the time that I've written the most about, at the time of Thomas Jefferson and the time of Thomas Paine, both of those gentlemen deists, an intelligent person would probably have had no choice but to believe something very like that. There's no superstition to it. There's nothing supernatural about it. But it leaves the theist, like my learned opponent, with all, if I make this concession, it leaves him with all his work still.
By the way, that's the one way you're allowed to actually talk about generally your opponent, your colleague, the person across from me, the counter to my argument, the gentlewoman, the gentleman. You're not allowed to say moron. You're not allowed to say anything that is pejorative. You have to show some form of respect because you're having a deep discussion with somebody else that you should be able to respect if you're going to have that discussion with them, because why else would you even debate them if you don't appreciate their mind? Huh. Yeah, why would you debate them if you don't appreciate their mind?
Yeah, sure.
So the foundation of which we build our reason and our logic on is on presupposed beliefs. So presupposed beliefs such as I experience things, or causality exists, or I can create logical.
By the way, this is very
rationalities. These are
patronizing to
things that
explain
are,
to
by
somebody while you're
definition,
reading it off of a
unjustified.
page that
Every
somebody else
single
is
person
feeding
who
you.
engages in any sort of argument has to rely on.
Is
So I
that
cannot-
true?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because that's the bounds of what we can prove as humans.
Oh,
yes.
okay. So our most foundational mental states don't have a justificatory path.
Correct.
Good. So that didn't necessarily entail.
By the way, I'm going to run this back real quickly because you can tell that this person in the video doesn't seem to actually know what they're talking about. They're just reading, and they don't actually really even seem to be engaging with the conversation. They're just reading out the card and then assuming that that's true.
We're going
And
to get into
Darth, the person who's
presuppositionalism,
speaking to
right?
them.
You wanted to start that conversation?
Is it arbitrary or not arbitrary?
I can't answer you yes or no like this because I understand how the
Yeah,
trap
because
works.
you don't want to admit to your
principle
failure in
one
the
that you
point
use
of thought.
consistently?
Past presuppositional beliefs, yes, it is.
Okay, so you're consistent in applying rational justification for your ultimate beliefs. Is that right?
Past presuppositional beliefs, yes, it is.
I don't know what that means. Okay,
It doesn't mean
that's
anything
more
in the-
verbal misdirection. Do
Yeah.
you
So no-
require
Rhetorical misdirection,
rational
that's right.
justification for your most ultimate beliefs?
Are you going to let me to explain this, or you're going to keep talking over me?
Well, I'd like just like a non-evasive.
I think that one's really funny. Hold on, let's run that one back just to double check.
Past presuppositional beliefs, yes, it is.
Is it arbitrary or not arbitrary?
I can't answer your yes or no like this because I understand how the trap works.
Is your principle one that you use consistently?
Past presuppositional beliefs, yes, it is.
Okay, so you're consistent
Space.
in applying rational justification for your ultimate beliefs. Is that right?
Past presuppositional
Open.
beliefs, yes, it is.
I don't know what that means. Okay, that's more verbal misdirection. Do you
So no-
require rational
You just talked over it.
justification for your most ultimate beliefs?
Are you going to let me to explain this, or you're going to keep talking over me?
Oh my
Well, I'd like
goodness!
just like
Oh
a
my
non-evasive-
goodness! What a gaslighter! Holy shit, agent of confusion, Emily. That is absolutely 100% correct. How amazing was that little display of fakery? Good job on Darth for just running right on through it, being like, and literally utilizing the patience and complete short sentences in this facet to undermine what he already expects from his opponent in this case. But that's the difference between respecting someone's thought and giving them the chance and grace to take the floor and or make a fool of themselves, because that's their job, not yours. Your job in these debates is to state your point, follow it up with information, and summarize. Attacking the other person ad hominem or whatever you want to go on about is not actual debate. That's argument. That's a lack of reasoning. That's where you've already lost. As soon as that happens, you've lost. And if you disagree with any of this, feel free to call on in. The green room was open. You're always welcome to share your thoughts. Just a Discord away, my friends. Just a Discord away. And yes, Emily, agent of confusion. That's right. How amazingly... the fact that I found this is crazy. There's a lot crazy about this video, by the way. But I'm savoring that.
To come. He still has to show, somehow, not only that there is a God, but that he himself, understands the mind of that God, knows the will, or can interpret the will and wishes of that deity on such weighty questions as what is good, what is evil, what foods may be requisite, or what foods may be profane, what sexual partnerships are allowed, what sexual positions indeed are licit or legitimate, what days of the week are holy or otherwise, whether it is requisite to mutilate the genitals of children. Major questions where someone has to say, yes, I know we must do this because I happen to know what God wants us to do. Now, it's my submission, ladies and gentlemen, and I think it's a fairly
Isn't that
modest
a great
one,
argument always?
that brilliant as a mathematician Dr. Lennox may be, no person, no other human being, no other primate, no fellow mammal of mine, however clever they may be, is in any position to say that they know God's will, or God's word, or God's desire or intention.
And technically,
This
it's
information
counter
is
to
not
the
accessible
Christian faith.
to human beings, and therefore my
That's
first
my argument
statement is
about
this:
that
those
constantly.
who do claim that they know are already, in a sense, discredited. They are deluded, and in a sense, they're the first ones who have to concede that the argument goes on without them, because we have to be awed, all of us, more and more, all the time, more and more awed at that, as we discover how much more there is to know by how little of it we do know or can know. It's only those who say that they know they are certain who we have to distrust, a priori, if I can use that.
Aha. We shouldn't trust those who definitively declare that they know. That logic also goes with leadership. That logic also goes with, those that would sell you an idea and just be absolute about it and not give you any inkling that there might be some issues or where those issues have been found. Because those are the great humans who are not going to hide what's really going on from you or others. And they won't pretend that they're not involved if they are.
Well,
Sure. So the response is past presuppositional beliefs, yes.
oh, I don't know what that means.
Can I explain it?
Yeah, sure.
So the foundation of which we build our reason and our logic on is on presupposed beliefs. So presupposed beliefs such as I experience things, or causality exists, or I can create logical, rational statements. These are things that are by definition unjustified, that every single person that engages in any sort of argument has to rely on.
Is that true?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because that's the bounds of what we can prove as human.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. So our most foundational mental states don't have a justificatory path.
Correct.
Good. So that necessarily entails the falsity of the Christian God.
It what?
I
It
love that.
necessarily follows from that the falsity.
He doesn't.
of the
I'm sorry.
Christian
He
God.
doesn't
Are you aware of
understand.
that?
Not necessarily.
he-
well,
No,
unless your
necess- no,
definition
no,
of the
necess-
Deny.
no, necessarily it would, because in the Christian
own
worldview,
idea.
by definition, the Christian God has ordained and sovereignly given us our most foundational beliefs about reality, and they're therefore, by definition, not axiomatic or assumptions.
Okay, sure.
So
Yeah,
you-
I can accept that. Sure.
Right. So what your assertion that our most foundational mental states are axiomatic or unjustified assumptions, then from that it necessarily follows the falsity of the Christian God. So agreed?
Sure.
Okay, good. Do you have a defeater for the Christian God?
So basically,
Can you
what
explain to me by defeater?
what
Yeah. If you don't,
Darth
have a
has basically
defeat-
done is dismantle the initial logic and argument that Stephen Bennell has brought to the table, and put Stephen on the defensive. And you can actually see it. I love that this is a full frame, so you can see the real normal reactions and see the seething and the sideways mouth and all the weird little quirks and such going on. Because this is a great example when you go into a debate without the actual knowledge to have that debate, and somebody takes apart your logic in a very eloquent fashion and uses the dialectic that you tend to use, the jargon that you tend to use, like a precision blade against you, and then points out your evasion. And that's a tough one to get past, especially when someone has done it really comprehensively. Basically, just, what do they call it, ratioed this guy already straight off the bat. By the way, it's only 4 minutes into their discussion, just so y'all know. If somebody ever goes, bruh, you totally took that out of context. Daddy Smurf, he smells like Mel. Which smells like Sneeko. Anyways, that's just me. That's just... oh my goodness, that's just me. Anyhow. I'm gonna go back. What am I saying?
Very well. Hoping I've established that point, just
Oh,
for
yeah.
the sake of
Sorry.
the debate. We don't have a word adeist, though I think we should. I would say I was an adeist as well as an atheist. I don't believe there was a prime mover. I don't believe there was a first cause of a divine kind. I think we have better and further and brighter explanations for the origins of things than the idea of a supernatural first cause. But some also would say we don't even really need the word atheist, because after all, I don't require a special term. When I tell you I don't believe in a tooth fairy, you don't say, well, what's the word for someone who doesn't do that? When I say I don't believe in witches and I don't believe in the biblical injunction to kill them either,
Yeah.
they don't say, what is it to be
I love
a
his take on that,
non-believer
by the
in witches and witchcraft? When I say to a Muslim, your prophet believes in dust devils and jinns and the haunting spirits of the desert, there's shows what nonsensical peasant superstition is involved in the Muslim profession of faith. No one says to me, what word are you using to say you don't believe in dust devils and jinns? I think I could be generally credited with having good reasons for my doubt. However, I think that the challenge is a fair one, because I think we are divided as between those of us who attribute our presence here to the laws of biology and the laws of physics, and those of us who, and we are modest in doing that, I think, we say we submit ourselves to the evidence, and even if it comes up with conclusions that aren't very welcome to us, we will accept them if they're well-founded. And those who are conceited enough, I would say, arrogant enough, in fact,
Arrogant.
to think that they are here
I love that.
as the consequence of a divine design. There's all the difference in the world between those two worldviews, and the big difference is one of them has evidence for it and the other doesn't. And one of them will say in advance what would refute
hold on a
it.
second.
I can tell you if you ask me
Hold on one second.
would mean I'd have to change my mind.
I said, hold on, everybody.
I would never do that.
Hold
I would never
on.
tell you in advance. Show me this and I'll stop believing.
I don't think that I need a defeater for a belief.
Yeah,
I think
No, he totally does. He totally does need a defeater. And Lita Caproni just busted on in. Hold on. Where the heck am I? Why do I not have... Lita Caproni! What's happening? How you feeling? So glad you could be here. It's a slow day. It's a slow day around these parts. But then again, I am covering a very heady topic, and I didn't. That air horn should wake everybody up. Yeah, welcome. I'm so glad you could be here. By the way, thank you for being here. So glad everybody could join. Anyhow, oh yeah, have you seen my new shot? I stole it from a show called Tree of Wires. And welcome. No problem. I started the show a little later than I normally would today to try to well, first I had other things like going on in the YouTube verse that I'm covering that just seem to always want to come right on top of well, I'm about to start a show and I had to cover that stuff because I know it's going to go away, and I'm not going to tell you what that is, but it is a little interwoven in today's lore in the background, strangely enough. Yeah, anyhow. But thank you, Lita, for being here. Today's topic is about God in general and the comparison of the language we've lost in the discussion about God and the capability that people have lost in the online environment, specifically to, well, comprehensively have the discussion at all, or stand their ground, or even have any kind of idea. And Christopher Hitchens, being the zenith representative of what we would consider atheism, I feel like is an excellent example in comparison to one Smurf man in the background, who is pre-Smurf. This is 4 years ago, by the way, in the background, having a conversation with a character from Discord. I'm not sure which server, but that character's name was Darth. And Darth, you know, I want you to keep in mind, I keep feeling like I know this voice. Like I've heard this voice before. I've heard this logic. I've heard this language, the formation of the sentences. I mean, you know, I could be wrong. I'm pretty good with that stuff. Pretty good with that stuff, though. I could be wrong. What do you think, Fred? What do you think, Fred? You're kind of dusty, Fred. What do you think? Fred kind of looks like him when he doesn't have the mustache. No, not Hitchens. The person who I think it is. Anyways, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know if you're not following it. You'll know at some point. It's all good though, because it's one of the greatest cons that's ever been had on the on a whole group of people that just are sure they're the smartest people in the room. And speaking of which, let's just go back to our friend, the little Smurf. And how can I officially co-host like this? I'm sorry. Thank you. Oh yeah, the reminders. Oh, okay, folks. By the way, if you didn't know, so when you go into your your subscribership stuff, there's a little bell, right? Or you can go up to the notifications up at the top. If you just hit the bell, it doesn't give you all the notifications. As a matter of fact, it only gives you the notifications that YouTube decides you should get. How effed is that? Yes, apparently, Lita, Destiny, his new nickname is Tiny. And not to bring back the whole Trump tiny hands thing, but and we know what that means, right? Tiny hands, tiny feet, small shoes and gloves. So, yes, that's exactly what that means. You don't have to extrapolate very far for that. In any case, it must be why he likes the, 22 and 18 and OnlyFans. I don't know. I could be just imagining these things. Just like the voice. It sounds familiar, but I'm not sure. You tell me. But if you're not familiar with it, that's okay. I'm not blaming you. Anyways, Christopher, I'm sorry. I'm totally off. You know what? I was going to share with you.
No, you do. You need a defeater for the existence of God, for the existence of the Christian God, because in the case that the Christian God exists, unless you rule him out, then in the case that he exists, then your stipulation is not necessarily true, that we start from foundational assumptions.
If my foundational assumptions lead to your definition being incorrect, then I guess foundationally I would acknowledge.
By the way, Ben,
that
if you happen to be watching, feel free to call in.
I'm waiting for a defeater for the Christian God. What is it?
I've already applied one. If my presuppositional beliefs are the defeater, then that would be the defeater.
And giving me an if is not a defeater. Do you have a defeater?
I'm going by your definition. Your definition was that my presuppositional beliefs rule out the existence of your Christian God. Can I please finish my sentence, please, before you cut me off? Okay. So you asked me to provide a defeater.
He had finished his sentence. We've already been through this, by the way. I had actually, there's a specific volley where he's like, "Can I finish my sentence?" And nobody had talked over him. Or he says that you're talking over me now. And it's like he was literally done with the sentence. And then Destiny spoke, and it was normal discourse. Anyways, yeah, it's just crazy gaslighting shit. It's not even a discussion at this point about anything. It's a stalled conversation that's not getting anywhere. Just craziness. W's in the chat. You stopped him from talking about anything. Stupid prevail. Anyways, this man is probably 3 quarts of gin or bourbon to the wind, and he's still like a library. Not that you should be drinking to gain knowledge, but frankly, that's just the character of the guy. And I can't say anything bad about it because
there's always an infinite replenishment of the infinitely renewable resource of faith going on. In fact, it's the humility of it that makes me laugh at it in a way the most. They say that they're humble, these believers in God. They want to be written up as modest because they think that, of course, that God tells them they're worms, originally sinful, ingrates, incurable, made out of dust in one narrative, out of a clot of blood in the Quranic narrative, bad, off to a pretty shaky start, condemned since an original fall of man. Nonetheless, cheer up. The universe is designed with you in mind.
3 bricks shy of a load. Oh my God.
This is a depraved form of sadomasochism in my view. It's not good for you to go from this terrible abjection and serfdom in the one instance to this belief that you are the center of creation and the object of the cosmos in the other. It's a terrible alternation, a neurotic alternation between being much too servile and much too arrogant. But just locally, what would it be to believe this?
What would it be to believe that? Suppose you did believe.
Don't understand why you're asking me for a defeater when I've apparently already provided you one.
Are you using circular reasoning?
Can you please let me finish a statement before you cut me
off?
off?
I thought you were done.
Okay, I was almost done, but you're really anxious to get in with your next fallacy, okay? So
with his next fallacy.
You go on. Go ahead.
So you're done?
I'm done.
By the way,
okay.
That's the face.
Is your defeater
tell me if I'm wrong.
Circular?
You're both moms.
Can you please?
Is this not the face of
I pull out the existence.
A little, like a kid's look when they think they've gotten away with something, like when they can't hide it because they haven't learned how to practice, Poker face? Tell me. You tell me.
Then I guess foundationally I would acknowledge that your definition is impossible.
I'm waiting for a defeater for the Christian God.
I've already applied one. If my presuppositional beliefs are the defeater, then that would be the defeater.
And giving me an if is not a defeater. Do you have a defeater for the
I'm going by
existence of
your
the Christian God?
definition. Your definition was that my presuppositional beliefs rule out the existence of your Christian God. Can I please finish my sentence, please, before you cut me off? Okay. So you asked me to provide a defeater to your Christian God after you told me that my presuppositions were a defeater for your Christian God. So I don't understand why you're asking me for a defeater when I've apparently already provided you one.
Are you using circular reasoning?
Can you please let me finish a statement before you cut
There.
me
I
off?
thought you were done.
Okay, I was almost done, but you're really anxious to get in with your next fallacy, okay? So just let me finish a statement before you go on. Go ahead.
Like he's like just about to start
done?
I'm done now.
smiling
Okay.
because he knows that he deflected and avoided.
If you consider an unjustified...
And by the way,
presumption,
he's
can you
caught
complete your
because the other person is a father of
I don't think that I need
6
a
kids, I
defeater for a
believe.
belief.
Yeah, you do.
I could be
you
wrong.
need a defeater for the existence of God, for the existence of the Christian God, because in the case that the Christian God exists, unless you rule him out, then in the case that he exists,
And then look
your
at the face
stipulation is not necessarily true, that we
dejection. And by the way, of
Christian
when the
God
kid is
has
caught.
ordained and sovereignly given us our most foundational beliefs about reality, and they're therefore, by definition, not axiomatic or assumptions.
Okay, sure.
So
I can accept that, sure.
Right. So what your assertion that our most foundational mental states are
Except he's
axiomatic
31
or
here.
unjustified assumptions, then from that it necessarily follows the falsity of the Christian God. So agreed?
Sure.
Okay, good. Do you have a defeater for the Christian God?
Can you explain what you mean by defeater?
Yeah, if you don't have a defeater that falsifies the Christian God,
Can
then
you
your
explain-
stipulation that our most
it's like
foundational
he doesn't
beliefs
even understand
are
the
axiomatic
conversation.
or just assumptions is not necessarily true.
I don't think that I need a defeater for a belief.
Yeah,
I think
you do.
No, you
You
do.
need a
If
defeater
you're
for
going
the
to have that
existence of
discussion,
God,
yes.
for the existence of the Christian God, because in the case that the Christian God exists, unless you rule him out, then in the case that he exists, then your stipulation is not necessarily true, that we start from foundational assumptions.
Exactly.
if my foundational assumptions lead to your definition being incorrect, then I guess foundationally I would acknowledge that your definition is impossible.
I'll
Sure.
wait.
Well, hold on a
Yeah,
second.
I'm
That
wait-
is
I'm
a
waiting
okay.
for a
That is a
defeater for the
presupposition
Christian
of
God.
I've already
correctness.
was by
applied one.
design.
By the way.
My
And not an
Well, we-
actual assumption or assertion that then provides a fact or point. He just assumes that he's correct. And by using jargon, somehow that asserts his belief that he's correct, that makes him a correct. I mean, it's not even. Yeah. Emily, I feel the same way. I'm going to need some goddamn ID. It's literally adolescent logic talking with somebody that's clearly educated and eloquent, as well as just dismantling every section of the conversation and using dialectic or jargon that is, it's highbrow stuff. But I'm not gonna lie, it's what Destiny tries to do. I'm sorry. Daddy Smurf. Is that bad? Should I not call him Daddy Smurf? Wait, hold on a second. Should I not? It's like citing yourself as the source. Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And then it makes me want to go. Because, see, in the book of Spider-Man, it proves that DC Comics, what? Yeah, citing yourself as the source. That's exactly what it is. The arbiters of idea, the arbiters of identity, the arbiters of what's cool. This sounds really familiar. It sounds like high school. It sounds like junior high. Folks that don't know much better, but they are sure that you don't know, so that they think they can pull one over. Meanwhile, what really happens in these kind of situations when you're talking with somebody who might know a little something.
Necessarily, it would, because in the Christian worldview, by definition, the Christian God has ordained and sovereignly given us our most foundational beliefs about reality, and they're therefore, by definition,
From the point of view of a
not
Christian.
axiomatic or assumptions.
Okay, sure.
So
Yeah, I can accept that, sure.
Right. So what
Okay,
your
so he's
assertion that our most
conceded the point,
foundational
by the way,
mental
there.
states are axiomatic or unjustified assumptions, then from that it necessarily follows the falsity of the Christian God. So agreed?
Sure.
Okay, good.
I love that.
do
By the
you
way,
have
I
a
don't know if you
definition
realize
for the
this,
Christian God?
but whoever Darth happens to be, just argue both sides. Gem Savage! By the way, let me give Emily a reintroduction. Emily! Because I didn't give Emily an introduction because I'm about to go Gem Savage! Thank you for coming. We're going over the language and behaviors, and the differences in these things between civil discourse and this guy. I'm sorry, and generally the modern day version of the debate. And we're comparing it with famed. Oh, I'm still in. What's happening? How you guys doing? I'm still in close up. Yes, indeed. Welcome, welcome. How's it going? So, we've been comparing the language and behaviors of modern debate between Christopher Hitchens, and we haven't gotten to John Lennox yet, who's a famous mathematician who took over the debate last minute with Hitchens, who's a famous atheist. And I basically wanted to go back and forth between the ideology and comparison of language and what modern debate has lost in that discourse. And I think it's something we should take real close note of, because hot damn, if there isn't a distinct difference between
Are you aware of that?
Not necessarily. Well, unless your definition of the Christian.
No,
Okay, sure.
necessarily it would, because in the Christian worldview, by definition, the Christian God has ordained and sovereignly given us our most foundational beliefs about reality, and they're therefore, by definition, not axiomatic or assumptions.
Okay, sure.
So
Yeah, I can accept that, sure.
Right,
and then
so
he
what your
debates
assertion
the other side
that
for
our most
himself.
foundational mental states are axiomatic or unjustified assumptions, then from that it necessarily follows the falsity of the Christian God. So agreed?
Sure.
Okay, good. Do you have a defeater for the Christian God?
It's like he's spoon feeding him what he needs and he doesn't even know it.
If you don't have a defeater that falsifies the Christian God, then your stipulation that our most foundational beliefs are axiomatic or just assumptions is not necessarily true.
I don't think that I needed to.
He's basically saying you don't actually
No,
have an
you
argument,
do.
so
you need a defeater for the existence of God.
none of what you're
for the
saying is
existence of the
true,
Christian God,
and you
because
don't
in
have
that
a
case,
leg to stand
that the Christian
on.
God-
You don't got a leg to stand on. Yeah. Whew. By the way, Darth, if you're out there and listening, feel free to call in. I would love to hear from you, Darth. I feel like I know this voice somewhere. And let's hear what Hitchens has to say.
99.9% of all species that have ever existed just on this planet have become extinct. So heaven has already watched almost 100% of its creation die off, often in very unpleasant, callous circumstances, with folded arms, right? And that's billions of years of geological time. Some people say the Homo sapiens has been around for 100,000 years, some for as long as 250,000. No one says less than 100,000. Francis Collins, the great Christian believer who did the Human Genome Project, says certainly 100,000. I'll take 100. Richard Dawkins thinks it's more. I'll take 100. What does it mean if we're divinely supervised and divinely created and looked out for? It means that for 98 or so thousand of those years, humans, Homo sapiens, were being born, dying, half of them in childbirth, I would think. Life expectancy maybe of 20 years, maybe of 30. People dying essentially of their teeth, out of hideous diseases, living in permanent fear. Where are the earthquakes coming from? Where are the lightning strikes coming from? Why is all this? What are these diseases that hit us? We don't know about microbes. We have no idea.
And what he's going to point out is the natural order of defining the unknown and giving it a name is essential to the human pareidialic need. That's why pareidolia is an experience at all. Why you can look up at the clouds and see, the rabbit in the cloud and have an imagination. Our mind needs these things. And I'm not defining God as not real or real. I am just pointing out that this is the logic he's taking because he's making a defined point that you can follow and infer or extrapolate off of based off of all kinds of multi-schooled sets of knowledge, wisdom, information. This person is educated. He's referring to a lot of complex information.
That's to say nothing about the fights with neighboring tribes over women, over land, over meat, over subsistence, the torture, the violence, the cruelty that goes on. I don't need to underline all of it, I hope. You can picture it for yourself. First 98,000 years, heaven watches this going on with perfect insouciance. And something like 2,000 to 3,000 years ago decides, right, we have to intervene now. We have to do something about this. Well, what would be the best way of intervening to try and redeem this rather bleak picture? What about having somebody tortured to death in an obscure part of the Middle East?
And
that ought to cure it.
Emily says that she can see those points. That she does guess we do seem crazy. By the way, Emily, you have just experienced the dial moving in yourself about perception, about bias, about allowing a thought to creep in like a mild contagion. That is why these discussions are so important, because you can sit across the table from somebody you probably don't agree with at all. I often hear that this guy, Hutchins, was kind of a stanky mess, but, he makes points that are, pretty important, or they're weighty, they're convincing. What can we say? So I don't blame you. But we haven't even got to the other side yet, by the way. So let's give that some space and not just give way. And I'm not going to say, once again, we've talked about God on other shows. We've talked about belief. We've talked about reality. I really am looking at the way that this discourse happens, the grace that each side gives the concepts and inclusion of the ideas. And I think it's important for us to be able to have the ideas, express it in a way that is creative and intellectual and empathetic, so that folks can take away stuff and go, wow, I kind of sound a little crazy when you look at it from that point of view, because now you are seeing it from another person's point of view. Empathy, very important. Very important. Standing in someone else's shoes. How hot dang important is that? Good night. Good night. Good night. A little empathy goes a long way. A little grace goes a long way in a conversation. Telling you, you don't have to trust me. You can just find out for yourself how these things really, they matter.
I don't understand the question.
Do you have any truth claims that?
By the way, if you haven't already
I
smashed
don't
the
need
button,
any truth claims.
Can you
smash it.
falsify the Christian?
And
I
the
have, by
thumbs,
assuming my
they're
presupposition.
huge.
According to
but
you.
they're free.
Okay, so what you were saying is
Larger than my
in
head.
virtue of something
Seriously.
that you imagine, because it doesn't cohere and conform to the Christian God, therefore the Christian God doesn't exist?
If that's your argument, sure.
No, sir, that was a question. It wasn't an argument.
It sounds like you're just rephrasing what we've already stated
Sir,
5 minutes ago.
listen, there's only so much evasiveness.
It sounds
I'll
like
put
it.
up
I'm not
with.
being evasive at all.
Okay, one more time, I'm going to ask you, what is your objective statement that falsifies the Christian God?
And again, I will answer the same way, that I have presuppositions that are necessarily unjustified, because epistemologically we cannot justify some presuppositions, and according to your definition of a Christian God, these presuppositions necessarily entail that he is not true.
Okay. Not exist because I don't know.
Can I hear your justification
you
for
say
your
that?
presupposition?
Did you? I will be. So you falsify the Christian God from your foundational starting points, and are they the product of your imagination?
I'm not sure. I can't really say.
So you don't know where they come from?
That is exactly what I have just said
Okay,
to you.
good. So the Christian God does not exist because of you have ideas that you don't know that they're veridical.
Exactly.
Good. So the Christian God is falsified in virtue of I don't know?
Correct.
Okay, do you realize how absurd that is?
Can you justify your presupposition?
I'm sorry. That is just one of the greatest boiling down of you just lost, W's in the chat, fucking cope response backwards. Holy shit, that was amazing. Like, talk about it, just a smash. There should just have been a winner, chicken motherfucking dinner. That's right, folks. Let's just run that right on back there, because that is spoilers. Win.
So the Christian God does not exist because of you have ideas that you don't know that they're veridical.
Exactly.
Good. So the Christian God is falsified in virtue of I don't know?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, do you realize how absurd that is?
Can you justify your presuppositions to
Do
me?
you see? I hope somebody's recording this, okay?
Why are you acting
Trust-
like
trust Darth. It got
presuppositions need to be
recorded
properly
hardcore.
justified?
Do you realize?
686,000 or 684,000 views.
Stated that the Christian God
4
does
years
not
ago.
exist because I don't know.
Can I hear your justification
Did you
for
say
your
that?
presupposition?
Did you? I will be glad to discuss with you my point of view, but I'm waiting for a cogent defeater for the Christian God.
He's waiting
Saying
for
the
a
Christian
cogent
God does not
defeater
exist in
for the
virtue of you
Christian
stipulating
God.
I don't know is not a defeater
Now,
for the Christian
everybody
God.
knows
I don't
I'm
appreciate
by no means a
characterizing
theist.
our epistemological limits.
Monotheist
I
at
don't
all,
know.
sir?
No, I
Did
don't.
you
I
say
reject.
that?
I reject your
Okay, good.
characterization of my
Okay,
argument.
good.
So
The
can I
Christian
rephrase
God
my
does not-
argument? Can I
He
rephrase my
rejects the
argument?
characterization because
Okay, so
that's what matters, is that he
epistemologically-
doesn't think it's right, and apparently he's the arbiter of what's right, even though he's admittedly doesn't have any knowledge of the subject. And his topic, he's already capitulated within the first 5 minutes of the conversation to the fact that his point has no point, actually, which is even more amazing when you think about it. It's fucking astonishing. I don't even know how you could be this ignorant, arrogant, solipsistic, and still. Yes, why was he debating with an academic? And shalom! Shabbat shalom. Oh, it's not Shabbat, actually. I apologize. I'm so quick to say that. And here, let me actually pop over to the other one, because I've been given the old... Hey, Abba! Thank you for joining us. So lovely to have you here. We're talking about the language lost in the conversation. And of course, the Blue Smurf has strangely, and I'm glad Abba appeared, because I don't want people to think that I am obsessed with this person by any means. This is a continuation of a storyline, and I didn't intend to have this be. I was going to use some tomfoolery stuff or some modern debates, because, that's on a Christian campus as well, so there's lots of stuff. And initially, I was looking at a Ben Thorpe debate last night that got taken down. I was hoping to use as the comparison, because it was much more intellectual, it was much more involved, people who really know what they're talking about. But that got taken down immediately afterwards, because Ben had to deal with some legal matters or something. The cops showed up or something happened. Anyways, adding to the lore. But, so I had to go for a backup option, and whoop, up pops this debate with someone named Darth. Someone named Darth. And this is through a Discord server, and a debate Discord server. So, yeah, I don't know how he got involved. He's being called by the mod a little later of this Discord server, or the owner or somebody. He's being called an AMA. I don't know what that means. Oh, I apologize. I hope you're okay. I'm glad to see that your power came back on. I hope it's cooling you down. If a heat wave is taking your power down, be careful. I'm glad. Thank you for sharing the fact that you actually, are watching me with your power running down. Man, that is so cool. I appreciate you. That is very kind of you. Especially because this is such a heady set of material today.
We cannot evaluate whether or not presuppositions are true or false. It is not possible for humans to do.
So why can you use
summarize
that
position,
as a debatable
for you to summarize that position,
or
can I
point
finish my
of
statement,
view? Sure.
please? For you to evaluate that statement and claim that
No.
it's the same as just simply saying, I don't know, is an incredibly harsh characterization of what I'm saying.
Okay, do you know what's possible, sir?
Like that means anything.
using what we have agreed are reasonable ways to make
there's
deductions.
I'm not
about,
interested. I'm not asking what is we. I'm asking you. Do you know what's possible?
like truly, I don't know what the question means. Like truly,
Exactly.
no.
Yes,
the answer
we
is
know.
no. The answer is always going to be
Okay.
no to a question like that.
Yeah. Do you know it's possible? I think the answer to that is possibly. It's plausible. It depends on what the topic is, but yes, in this case, you either know or you don't know, because we're talking about a set of beliefs, and he's actually giving him a precedent that he knows is a false. He knows it's a trick question, but he can't stop himself. This person right here, pre-Smurfhead, from interacting with that, engaging with that, because it's a nothing burger, as opposed to engaging with the topic at hand to make his point. So let's go back to people who do that.
Or if you're a Muslim, what about getting an illiterate epileptic shepherd to start babbling and saying that he's been talking to an archangel? Or what about inventing the figure of Moses in a mountain that's never yet been found by any geographer, Mount Sinai? That's what you'd have to believe. I've got a minute, right? That's what you'd have to believe, and that's why I ask myself, why do the worshippers of this God
Isn't
want
that
to
crazy? I'm
correct-
sorry, Emily. Oh my gosh, how correct? How that happens? Emily says, if you build it, destiny will come. God, he'll show up. Let's not use that word. Yes, if you build it, the Smurfs, they arrive, and that's I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to you when I say it's concerning. The algorithm knows. It knows. I think I like this shot way too much. I might end up just running the whole show with just my eyes. Anyhow. It's even more fun to watch it after the fact. But yes, Emily, amazing how that happens. If you build it, destiny will arrive out of nowhere. Like as if you called out the name Beetlejuice. Yeah, I'm not going to say it 3 times. Not going to say it 3 times. Although, there was a moment in time where I was like, I'm going to get on this show. And I'm like, fuck that dude. Make him show up here. Just like Ben did. That was fantastic. I'm not a fan, really. I am more fascinated with the amount of wang dangling this person has done. And I think I found out why they might be wang dangling, but that's a whole other topic for a later time in this episode, likely.
Of being such a crummy designer, most of his creations die off, and the rest suffer miserably, and the redemptive offers just don't somehow take. Of being cruel and capricious and bungling and incompetent. Why, and callous as a father. And so, since this is as far as I can get now, I have to tell you why I don't think the idea of an eternal father is a good one in any case when I next get the chance to draw breath. But thank you for staying with me this far.
Whoever's clapping should be smashed. They're making a new... Oh, they are? That's exciting. I hope they pick a good person, because it's hard to replace the one and the only original Beetlejuice. That was such a good movie. Smurf will fall down. Abba says, Smurf will
Good
fall
evening,
down.
ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for coming. It's
You're
a great pleasure
You're
for me.
welcome, sir. You're welcome. Would you solve a crime for us now? Sorry, that was mean. Smurf will fall down very hard, Abba says. Just like the Colleen Ballinger, a.k.a. Miranda Sings grooming controversy victims, will start coming out. Yeah, there's already been a lot. Mr. Girl went down that route and ended up, going nuts because he just couldn't make his point. But he's also that guy. I mean, there's a whole list of them. Pretty much everybody who gets involved with him, if you're not a kind of problematic personally, and looking for what they call clout, or trying to make a bag off of whatever they're doing, and you have low ethical values, basically, and you're part of that WL gaming culture, then, then you hang out as long as you can. But for the most part, there's folks that, they don't last very long, and there's a long trail of them. And we don't want to just start at Trihex. No. There's a whole lot of them. Even before that. Trihex is just a great example of where he got famous for doing that shit to people around him. And it's never really mattered, because you can tell, and that's kind of the tell of the character of people around, including young Darius now, which we'll get to Darius at some point. It doesn't have anything to do with God. It's in the prologue, as usual. So,
To be back again.
oh
in
yes,
this
it's good to be
university.
back. Sorry, what are we talking
And
about? God.
Delighted to once more meet Christopher Hitchens. It's a delight to meet an Englishman who's an American citizen on his own territory.
By the way, grace makes all the difference in whether or not a person can be believed, and whether or not a person can be taken at face value, whether or not a person is actually kind, and whether or not a person believes what they're saying, whether or not a person is non-cynical. Grace to the other party that they're communicating with is very, very important to know. And by the way, Abba, I fully agree with that. I think that is coming in. Colleen Ballinger, I can't believe how long that took. Holy shit. It's just an example of how these things are just buried in the cultures of allowance, and how it's all good till somebody gets shirked. And I think that's really what we're also seeing in the Colleen Ballinger story, because that young guy, Adam, who really outed everybody. I mean, some of it is just kind of nothing burger, but when you look at the chats, that's where it's like, what the she's in her 30s, she's talking with 13-year-olds. What is going on? Yeah. Dennis with his child predator passport bro rapper will have victims come forward too. Yep, they're all going down soon, hopefully. I think that the arc or curve of these things is a natural progression we should expect from those who put out, for long periods of time, bad actions and behaviors, and then pretend that these things won't at some point catch up, won't surface again. It's access and allowance, and the belief that somehow nobody's gonna pull it up. Ooh, am I not plugged in? Oh, holy schmoly. Holy schmoly. Make sure none of the producers are behind me. Oh, I kicked out my own power, folks. There it is. There it is. Don't want to do that to the art computer. Don't do that to the art computer. Because it's live and shit will happen. That's for sure. Hello and welcome. And thanks for being here, by the way. Let's hear what Mr. Lennox has to say.
I agree very much with Christopher Hitchens. It is repudiation of many of the evils that he claims have been done in the name of God. But I've learned to distinguish between the greatness of God and the inexcusable evil that has been done by those professing his name. And so I do not deduce that God is not great and that religion poisons everything. After all, if I fail to distinguish between the genius of Einstein and the abuse of his science to create weapons of mass destruction, I might be tempted to say science is not great and technology poisons everything.
So, stipulating via critical comprehension, critical thinking, the ability to look at a subject and parse, whether it be the bias side of the subject or language, or to critically view something and understand the things you do agree with and the things you don't. Because complex issues require complex responses. Monolithic thinking is the sign of an adolescent mind, because an adolescent mind has not learned to give the gray areas any credence or to allow for a multi-schooled, multiplexed format of thinking. And I'd love to hear from you. By the way, if you have any thoughts on the subjects, if you have any thoughts on the people, the call-in is open to you. Always. On all platforms. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that, Abba. I'm doing my best. I try to find and include these things into both an informative and, widely scoping tale to try to make a comparison and see what we can change to talk about it and to give it a perspective that maybe not, maybe it's not being had. As well as, by the way, the debate bro culture is clearly coming to an end. So, thank goodness for it, because, the rubber band effect against it will be discourse and positivity. And I even think that we'll even have another sexual revolution, because all these non-promiscuous incels are going to hit middle age or their 30s. Ooh, it's going to be the 70s. It's going to be like, hey, do you want to go out on a Saturday? Come on in, because it's a good time. You know what I'm talking about. By the way, if you never saw the Love Orchestra Incorporated, woo! 2 nights at the Madison Square Gardens, 1999. Whoa! Let me tell you, best smelling crowd ever. Everybody's on a date night, even if you're not. It doesn't matter. Love is in the air. I as well, Abba. And, prayer comes in a lot of facets. You can just observe the world. You can observe the word. You can observe the behavior. You can observe a lot of things. Meditation is prayer. Thoughts and poetry is prayer. Thinking about the world is prayer. Being is prayer. Because prayer is being at one in your temple. So I would argue that all of us pray on a regular basis. Some of us don't realize it, and we all have a different way of doing it. But communing, one way or the other, happens whether we like it or not. That's my take. That's my argument. And I'm happy to stand on that hill. Feel free to call in and argue with me about it. Or not. I don't care. That's why I leave the call-in line open, just in case somebody has something to say. By the way, just want to be clear about...
I'm not asking what is we. I'm asking you. Do you know what's possible?
Truly, I don't know what the question means. Truly, no? No. The answer is no. The answer is always going to be no to a question like that. No.
Okay, so you don't know anything is possible.
Correct. From a very foundational level, correct.
Right, so then why are you here stipulating anything if you don't know anything is possible?
Because I'm curious how you can make those same claims when you rely on the same presuppositions that I do. Sure.
Okay, so anything that you assert, you don't know that it's possible, right?
Okay, I want to hear your justification for your presuppositions. I've already answered yes a million times, sir. I don't want to talk about my system anymore. I want to hear you justify your presuppositions.
Okay, good. So
but he hasn't.
I will explain to you justifying the Christian worldview momentarily, but I want to go on record here.
It's already been on record, sir. Nobody is hiding.
Do not overtalk me. If you overtalk me, I'll server meet you, okay?
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
Destiny?
Now,
and by the way, look at the fear in his eyes.
I wanted to
and
go
suddenly,
on record here, and I
he
hope somebody's
actually,
recording this,
there's
that
accountability. He's not in his own little fiefdom anymore.
Anything is possible. Okay?
I'm going to run this back so you
Fly
can
on the same presuppositions that I do. Sure.
Okay, so
question means truly no? No. The answer is no. The answer is always going to be no to a question like that. No.
Okay.
So you don't know anything is possible.
Correct. From a very foundational
level. He does not know.
Correct.
Right, so then why are you here stipulating anything if you don't know anything is possible?
Because I'm curious how you can make those same claims when you rely on the same presuppositions that I do. Sure.
Okay, so anything that you assert, you don't know that it's possible, right?
Okay, I want to hear your justification for your presuppositions. I've already answered yes a million times, sir. I don't want to talk about my system anymore. I want to hear you justify your presuppositions.
I'm sure you do, because you want to flip around the argument.
I will explain to you justifying the Christian worldview momentarily, but I want to go on record here.
It's already been on record, sir. Nobody is hiding.
Do not overtalk me. If you overtalk me, I'll server meet you.
Oh my God, accountability.
Yeah,
look at the face.
Yeah.
Destiny?
Now,
Moms, once again,
I wanted to go on
you
record
tell me
here.
what that face means. You tell me. That to me, and I could be wrong, But I kind of think that that's the face of a indignant kid who thinks they're being smarmy. And I could be wrong about that. But yes, Emily, I do feel like he got busted. And the face is telling. It's hilarious. It's so weird. Hold on a second. Let me edit this loop. What's going on? Every once in a while, I notice the orchestra will slip and be like, I'm like, that doesn't sound like it's on time. What's going on? Well, the piano's out for now. All right, that's fine, because the groove is still moving along, moving along, moving along. Yeah. Abba says, thank you and you're welcome for continuing to take your time in doing hard work to help expose these influencers, the heinous, monstrous grooming of young child victims over the years. I feel like there is definitely a victimization of a lot of folks that don't realize that they were influenced to a sense of nihilism and also a lack of discourse or an argumentative behavior or contrarian behavior, frankly, because of these influences. Yeah, I do agree with that, Abba. There's a weird set of influences going on that definitely changed the way people communicate. I'm concerned about it. It's why I came back online in the first place. I mean, who wouldn't when it tends to lead to fascism? The shit leads to fascism, authoritarianism, because people stop thinking that anything matters or that anything is real. So they ignore the atrocities. Okay? Anyhow. He's got there, but let's go back to real conversation.
What is more, as I look back at the evils of atheist regimes of the 20th century, I might also be tempted, ladies and gentlemen, to say atheism is not great. It has poisoned everything. As it is, I hold that science shows some of the greatness of God. The famous physicist James Clerk Maxwell, who discovered electromagnetic theory, inscribed above the door in his laboratory in Cambridge University the words, "Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them." Yet Christopher Hitchens says, thanks to the telescope and the microscope, religion no longer offers an explanation of anything. I find it impossible as a scientist to take such a statement seriously, as if using a microscope on a Rembrandt painting could disprove the existence of Rembrandt himself. The idea that God and science are mutually exclusive explanations of the universe is as wrong as saying that internal combustion and Henry Ford are mutually exclusive explanations of the automobile. They are complementary explanations. One explains how it works, the other why it exists. To think that as the reach of our instruments increases, the greatness of God the Creator somehow diminished, is to make the mistake of confusing mechanism with agency. When Newton discovered the law of gravity, he didn't say, now I know how the universe works, I don't need God. No, his wonder at how it was done increased his admiration for the Creator who'd done it that way. And Newton wrote the most famous scientific treatise of all time, the Principia Mathematica, in the hope that it would persuade the thinking man to believe in a deity. Telescopes can show us the wonder of the night sky, but science didn't put the stars there, nor did the laws of biology and physics. Ladies and gentlemen, They describe what is there, they don't put it there. Stephen Hawking says the usual approach of science of constructing a mathematical model cannot answer the question why there...
Yeah, unfortunately for this guy, that's kind of been debunked, and we've looked at that a little bit, but I'll let him keep talking anyways.
should be a universe for the model to describe. He then asks, why does the universe go to all the bother of existing? Does it need a creator? Yes, it does need a creator. Alan Sandage, widely regarded as one of the fathers of modern astronomy, who discovered quasars, said, I find it quite improbable that such order came out of chaos. There has to be some organizing principle. God to me is a mystery, but is the explanation for the miracle of existence, why there is something rather than nothing. And another giant of cosmology, Arno Penzias, won his Nobel Prize for discovering an echo of the Big Bang. But Penzias could see how unimaginably greater is the God who conceived of this beginning to space-time in the first place. Astronomy, he says, leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing, one with a very delicate balance needed to provide exactly the right conditions required to permit life, and one which has an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan. Einstein
so
and the brilliant...
far, Lennox has based out how he sees, feels, and respects this being he believes and he perceives, both scientifically, empirically, and personally, to be existent. He's laying it out. Whether or not you believe him, whether or not you agree, he has made his premise. He's providing what he sees as fact. And there's no interjection. There's no overlapping. He's being very clear. There's nobody screaming. There's a point being made. And it's not rhetoric. It's not, I feel. It's not a deflection. It's not an evasion. It's a direct assertion of his beliefs and what he sees as empirical truth. What does the difference look like? We've been talking about that. I'll show you what the difference looks like.
I don't want to hear you preach for 2 hours, Royken. If not, I have no interest.
I didn't even finish.
I don't need you to finish this.
Okay, I don't want to have to server mute you, sir.
So I don't want to listen to you preach.
I don't want to have to server.
Calm down. Calm down.
Okay,
Calm
good.
down.
Okay, I server muted.
Stop.
Okay.
No, Darth. That's not a smart move.
Darth,
You just.
Shut the fuck up. It's my goddamn server. All of you. That's me. You the fuck included. Because I don't know who the fuck you are. All I know is that you're doing some bullshit AMAs on fake fucking politics servers. So you're gonna shut the fuck up. And Darth,
Interesting.
you're gonna shut the fuck
Let's
up.
listen to that again. I think it's important that we hear that.
The only fucking thing I know about
I didn't even finish.
I don't need you to finish this.
Okay, I don't want to have to server mute you, sir.
So I don't want to listen to you preach.
I don't want to have to server.
calm down. Calm down. Calm down.
Okay,
Calm
good.
down.
Okay, I server muted.
Stop.
Okay.
No, Darth. That's not a smart move.
Darth,
You just.
shut the fuck up. It's my goddamn server. All of you. That's me. You the fuck included. Because I don't know who the fuck you are. All I know is that you're doing some bullshit AMAs on fake fucking politics servers. So you're gonna shut the fuck up. And Darth, you're gonna shut the fuck up. Because Destiny, the only fucking thing I know about you is that you have the same name as a fucking video game. So,
Yeah,
here's
so
what we're
this
gonna
is 4 years ago.
We're gonna unmute Destiny.
Dude's like, I don't know who the fuck you are. You got the same name as a video game.
Okay? Then
And he's muted on somebody's
we're
debate
gonna go
server.
and have this shit make sense, right? And if you don't like it, get the fuck out of my server. Destiny included. Because in case you forgot, we are the largest politics server, always will be. And we don't ask for anything. People like Destiny just show up here because, well, they fucking have to if anybody gives a fuck. So,
So, okay. Well, that's interesting information to hear. He's about to ask, how do you count the people in the server? Yeah, this is because when you run a server, you actually have the number at the top. But okay, whatever. That's neither here nor there. It has nothing to do with the debate or argument. It's just him being contrarian like a 12-year-old.
Insight that the speed of light was an absolute constant. But what shall we say of the creative mind that said, let there be light, and there was light? To measure the speed of light is one thing, to create light is another. Far from science showing God is not great, as Christopher Hitchens suggests, the very opposite is the case. It was belief in God that motivated the advance of science in the 16th and 17th centuries. Galileo, Copernicus, Kepler, Newton expected to find law in nature because they believed in a great lawgiver. Now, so often we hear the new atheists talk about faith and deprecating it, but I want to tell you that scientists are all people of faith, as Einstein saw. They believe that the universe is accessible to the human mind. And physics cannot explain that for the simple reason that you can't do physics without believing that the universe is intelligible.
You can't do physics without believing the universe is intelligible. Wow. That's a strong argument. That is a fucking strong ass argument. Because what he's saying is you have to give the ability to cogent responsiveness. Basically, you have to give. I'll come back. Hold on a second. You have to give credence to the fact that there's a responsiveness to the universe, or the interplay of thought and respect of the universe in balance. So he's saying that interplay is into intelligence in itself, and that's God. And that's actually very interesting because that's how I take it. Now, this guy's a Catholic, so it's just shit. Yeah. It's these moments that make the difference in the conversation, in the discussion, in the back and forth. The ability for someone who you may not actually agree with to drop a little wisdom that just because you just never looked at the idea or the concept of the conversation in that light. And you may just get a little kernel for yourself that adds into what you have needed. So, and Emily says, yes, it's all of the above. It's just such an amazing thing when that stuff happens, because it's like fireworks in the brain. It's just wonderful. It really is. It really is. I believe that it's a spicy meatball of life. And Hitchens is over there taking notes. I love that. In his crumpled suit. Characters, real characters who were thinking about thought. They didn't really give a damn about what they're looking like, what games or mic they're talking into. No. What their audience thinks. No, they're trying to make a point. And that shit's way more important than if they look good to their sycophants. Don't forget, if you just joined us, like and subscribe if you wouldn't mind. Keeps me moving to the algorithm, and keeps me talking to you, and keeps other people seeing this. So hopefully we can, influence people. Smash on the button. Smash the button. And by the way, likes are free, so if you're just passing on through, I know Mike is live right now, so the bigger channels, everybody's live right now, by the way. I'm looking at the traffic, and it's huge. Traffic is huge right now on the internet highway. Hold on one second here. Let me just, boop, back to Smugman. Sorry. The Smurf.
Just find out the size of the server.
How we're going to start. You go on and say your point, but do not cut Destiny off if he asks a question. So you go and say your point, but don't drag it on too long.
Okay,
we're not going to do the
sorry,
bickering.
Yeah, he asked me a question. I was answering and he cut me off.
Okay, so this is my question. This is what I would like to do for a discussion.
No, you asked me a question. I'm gonna.
All right, hold on. No, we're gonna restart.
So in other words, Destiny didn't even remember what his question was. He just wanted to say something. He was waiting to just say something. He's not even listening to what's being said. He's not engaging, and that's really a lot of. And this face is. I was trying to say my point. You asked a question. You're going to give room for the answer, or
to defend the Christian worldview.
That's not what I asked.
Darth, you defended that for forever. We get it.
This is
Destiny's
how.
gonna ask you a question, and then you're gonna answer, and you guys can go, and you could go back and forth. So how we're gonna do it is, Destiny's gonna ask questions. The Christian worldview thing, what just happened before, let's pretend it didn't happen.
We found our moderator, boys.
Destiny, go ahead and answer the question. And if it leads to where
ANGELTHUMP.
we just were, great. But let's have a fresh restart. So Destiny, go ahead.
Okay, this is how I would like to do this discussion. If you don't like to do it, I acknowledge that, and that's
Now,
fine.
your opinion does not matter.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Darth.
Okay, well, after
So in other words,
question, we don't want to hear how the
right away, Destiny does not know how to work within the guidelines of other people's behaviors or to engage in the conversation in this fashion. He is already being told, as soon as he's out of his element or out of his control system or out of his bubble, or his sycophants, and somebody's like, no, dude, answer the fucking question or we're going to mute you. Suddenly there's an accountability that he can't keep up with. He doesn't even know how to. He wants to decide for everybody else what it's going to be, and they already told him, no, ask the question, let him answer, or fucking go away. It's amazing.
debate's going to
Okay,
go.
I'm
Either
not
ask the
talking.
question
I'm
or get
talking
the
to
fuck
Darth.
out.
If Darth doesn't want to participate in the discussion
No,
this
you're
way,
talking to me right now.
He's not taking
Okay.
part. He's telling them he's not.
Question or get the fuck out.
I thought I was
Ask
asking the question. Are you getting lost?
Don't say how it's going to go.
Patronizing.
Ask the question.
Okay, I'm good on that. So, Darth, if you want to have this conversation, I want to.
Okay, he's good on that. So basically, no respect, no sense of what's just been said to him.
Darth doesn't want to participate in the discussion
No,
this
No, you're
way.
talking to me right now.
Okay.
You're going to answer the fucking question or get the fuck out.
I thought I was
Ask the
asking the question. Are you getting lost?
Don't say how it's going to go. Ask the question.
No, Destiny, you're lost.
Okay, I'm good.
Steven,
on that.
you're lost.
So, Darth, if you want to have this conversation, I want to move through point by point rather than me asking a question and then you giving me
I'm
a
not
20.
hearing a question.
Bring up your
Okay,
point.
my
Bring up your
question
point. Bring up
is,
your point.
can you justify your presuppositions without talking about the whole history of your Christian faith? I want you to justify your presuppositions.
Your
so, for
ideas,
example,
your ideology.
you interpret
There's
the
so many other
divine
ways
word
to
of
say
God
that.
by reading it in
Means
the
he
Bible.
doesn't know what he's
How
asking.
can you trust your senses there to lead you into some kind of like ability to perceive words on paper? How can you justify that
Okay,
presupposition?
sir,
Projection.
you're asking more. You're asking
Yeah,
a
that
more
was a little bit
question.
low. I mean,
Okay,
shit,
listen.
my
Yeah,
girlfriend-
you need to listen, Destiny. Yeah. Now, how do I
So what is
justify?
the main? So, Darth, he's asking you to justify it, but in a, I think, Destiny, correct me if I'm wrong, in a way that doesn't
child pornography.
the entire. Okay, mute them. Destiny, I think you're trying to say, can you explain it with?
Listen, yeah, you need.
Justify your presuppositions. So, for example, you interpret the divine word of God by reading it in a Bible. How can you trust your senses there to lead you into some kind of like ability to perceive words on paper? How can you justify that
Okay,
presupposition?
sir, you're asking more. You're asking
Yeah,
a
that
more
was a little bit
question.
low. I mean,
Okay,
shit,
listen.
my
Yeah,
girlfriend-
you need to listen, Destiny. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
listening
how
is
do I
important.
What is
justify-
the main? So, Darth, he's asking you to justify it, but in a, I think, Destiny, correct me if I'm wrong, in a way that doesn't
child pornography.
the entire. Okay, mute them. Destiny, I think you're trying to say, can you
Oh, this
explain
is-
without explaining the entire Christian worldview, correct?
I just want to know how he could.
Abba says, "Run, evil run, evil Smurf demon, run! You've got nowhere to hide." Yes, when there's several people holding you accountable right now who are going to mute you or boot you because you're not engaging with the conversation at all, and you're getting called out because it's obvious you're not getting engaging at all, and still he's in denial. He's insolent about it. I don't even know if he knows. And if he does, he's cynical. And frankly, like ruthlessly sociopathic. That's crazy. That's crazy person behavior. Or you're like on drugs or something. I don't know. That's some wacky ass. That's crazy shit. Cray cray. Mama cray cray. Except it's Smurfy cray cray. That's really what it is. And the cray crays.
Trust his senses. That's my basic question. Justify that
So
presupposition.
there you go, Darth.
How do I trust the basic reliability of my sense perception?
Yes.
In virtue of God has ordained that mankind, insofar as we don't have a major defect in our senses, has basically reliable sense perception.
How do you know you don't have a major defect in your sense?
Why? How would I know?
So are you telling me you don't know? You're basing your entire worldview on a sense that you can't justify?
No, I do know because God has revealed it.
How do you know that God is revealing it to you?
He revealed it in the Bible.
How are you able to read the Bible and trust the words that you're reading?
With my eyes, because
how do you know your eyes accurately give you?
I'm
Destiny's world turns.
The way that I know things is I'm starting with my absolute.
Today on Destiny's World Turns, Mel out of the picture and sleeping with Sneeko. Can Destiny handle the conversation with the actual theist? Will Zerka decide to send Masonic Templars after Destiny? Is Myron going to come out that he's actually dating the Blue Smurf? All this and more as Destiny's World turns. Yeah, I expect that. I do expect that. Smurfy Cray Cray, that's correct. Smurfy Cray Cray. That's the new Smurfs that none of us asked for or wanted. By the way.
So scientists required faith, and yet I read Christopher Hitchens saying, if one must have faith to believe in something, then the likelihood of that something having truth or value is considerably diminished. Pardon? Well, one must have faith that the universe is intelligible to do science. So I am to deduce, am I, that the likelihood of science having truth or value is considerably diminished? Exit science then. And I presume that Christopher Hitchens, like most of the rest of us, believes in his own existence.
Oh, wait,
Yes.
wait, I'm sorry. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, my absolutely official, unofficial, but very much official co-host just asked me a very important question, and I don't know why the chat is not updating. There we go. Was the Sneeko part sarcasm? Lita. Oh, Lita. No, not at all. Actually, Sneeko and Mel are dating right now. Straight out. Like, she's over at in his feed every day. She's basically waking up at the house and she hasn't been there. And Smurf Boy, he's been dating around apparently. So, and interesting how this has all come around the Lauren Sutton thing. Huh. Which, by the way, if you don't know what that's about, apparently, well, there's just so much going on. As well as the cuckery. Everybody's a lot of these guys just must have so much access. Or they're gay, so they're down for their wife to be cucked. I mean, it could be, whatever. Each their own. That's fine if you want to watch. I don't care. It's up to you. But, what it does is titillate the 14-year-olds who've never had sex, so they think that, anything like that is, oh my God! Anyways. I picture them all as little chimpanzees, by the way. I am spilling some tea. I'm sorry if that was a spoiler, if you were waiting to go on. I know, Lita, you were definitely waiting to go on Sneeko's feed over there on Rumble or Kick or whichever. And I know you've been waiting all day to find that out. No, that's not. Xena is spiraling on Twitter. I don't know. I don't understand. Lita, what does that mean? Who's Xena? And why is she spiraling? And by the way, I don't know if you've ever seen, I have found a couple of folks. I found some interesting people. First off, I have found I found the Enclave. I found the root little, ratty enclave. the little ones that are really the troublemakers, like the core of it, they represent like thousands of characters that they don't, that, you know, once they're gone, a lot of people's views are going to go away. It's pretty funny, actually. And then on top of it, they're like adults who are basically playing high school games. It's very weird, including a complete mean girl who likes to pretend that she's never involved with drama, but every single piece of drama around this girl is about her. And then she tries to back away from it after she creates it. It's crazy. Xena is Sneeko's girlfriend and the bodyguard. Oh, that's what's going on. We have evidence of a woman child predator groomer, aka Colleen Ballinger. Now all of these other influencers are getting exposed. Oh yeah. It's just a matter of time for any of these folks. And you know, the whole generation of people going pedo, pedo, pedo are the same ones who are playing as adults video games with little kids on Roblox. So and Fortnite and shit like that. It's uncomfortable. And by the way, yeah, there's a lot. They're all pretty arrogant, by the way. It's really weird. I don't even know how they go out life. But let me just tell you, when they tell you that they're an editor, what they actually mean is that they're a bot distributor. That's what I've come to find. That's what I'm going to say as a specific thing, because it seems like there's a definite correlation in my mind as far as what I've observed and also what I'm starting to believe based off of evidence. So I believe that there's a lot of these folks who call themselves editors that are actually just hack botters. So when you hear, oh yeah, that dude's an editor, or I'm married to an editor, if you're not seeing that person do things like, call me Chris's editor, properly editing, but you see a lot of number games going on. Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing. I think we're seeing people who are good at SEO and playing with bots, setting embed pages so they add 12 more view pages somewhere on a server. I'm not saying I know who's doing that. I'm just saying that I may have found the root of where it all comes from, because, I do have them on video, despite the fact they took it down already, admitting that that's what they were doing. And then people shushing and, a lot of just basically egomaniacal behavior in the public eye. Just like teenagers do, but they're fucking in their 30s. It should be frightening you. And they're worldwide. They're not just like in one place. They're like a whole group of little gamer kids sitting there playing video games, crash 'em up cars, talking shit, reacting to videos that directly associate to them, and laughing about their bad behaviors, trying to normalize why their illegal activity is somehow, it's not illegal. It's not illegal. You're crazy. You don't talk to lawyers because I don't. Yeah. Well, kids, by the way, some of us have access to attorneys and lawyers that you can just call up and be like, hey, I paid you for the whole year. Can you give me a little advice on this? Because I'm looking at a subject, I'm following these things around. I'm wondering, is this legal? Where's the law? And then you get the precedent, and then you call them or text them late night, and they're like, fuck, man, stop. Yeah. No, but it's important, because if you want to know things, you got to be an adult about it. You got to follow through, and you got to come with receipts, not like these bitches who don't. Who the receipts that they do come with are it's vitriol. They like to dox. Anything that is like proof of them doing it is, I didn't do that. Even the women, by the way. And trust me, a woman is in charge of this shit, which is even more frightening. You should all be really frightened at the mean girl Heather who's in charge. They represent maybe even tens of thousands of bots out there, all filling in the pages. But I could be wrong about that. I don't think I am, though, because the evidence is pretty much stacked up at this point. Still have a little bit more to actually fully confirm, but that video, that I got for just yesterday is so telling, because then you can match the names and the characters and the people they talk about, and also their behaviors and language. Oh my God, and so much language. They're so obvious. They're not even good at hiding it, because they've gotten so used to just doing it out in the public that everybody knows. Stop the music for a second. One of the behavior problems that we have nowadays is that folks think that behind the screen they can't be seen, and they forget that we can find out who they are, and then they'll turn around. Yes, bot army, Emily. And by the way, 62% of the internet is bots, apparently, and it's growing daily. And these kids, these teenagers in adult bodies with adult jobs and influence, they're still behaving like 9th graders. And if I was to play for you this video, you'd listen to this one lady and you'd be like, oh, she has children? Yeah. But I can show you time and time again where these people don't have accountability for their involvement or engagement in anything. Much less the fact that they don't take responsibility because they know what they're doing is considered terrorism in some places and or harassment. And there's legal and civil matters that could catch up to them. And I would say that it will. It's just a matter of time. Because a lot of their behavior at its root, they're covering up real, actual, illegal behavior, I would say. Who is Heather? Oh, I'm calling her a Heather. Like the 80s Heathers. Mean Girl shit. Who get off on other people struggling from their bullying while they deny, I'm not being, the crowd agrees with me. Except this one's got a British accent. And she thinks she's the real smartest person in the world. I'm not a streamer. But she's on the stream every single day. Yeah. Anyhow, we don't need to talk about her. That's not the topic at this moment in time. But we will. Oh, we'll talk about all of them. And Kahoo, Nyam Nyam, will come to task and be called to the table. I mean, they already have been. They already got booted. But they'll be booted from everywhere, along with everybody else surrounding them. And that's all associated, by the way, directly to somebody else around here. I can't think of what's the fucking guy's name? Shit. What's his name? Fuck. Anyhow, I knew his name the whole time. Let's go back to it.
Am I to take it then that the likelihood he really does exist is considerably
Yeah, me
diminished?
too. I love Heathers. It was a great movie.
His statement is a self-refuting statement. And I find it ironical that the so-called new atheists are so passionate about ridding the world of faith that they appear to be blind to the fact that they themselves are driven by faith. They believe that their minds can grasp truth. They believe in science. They believe that God is not great.
And I can say,
Yet Mr.
I agree with
Hitchens
all this,
informs us
as somebody
in a
who's
classic oxymoron,
struggled with
our
their
principles
atheism
are not a
or
faith.
non-monotheistic
Our
beliefs.
beliefs are not a belief. The mind boggles, ladies and gentlemen. That is not the only irony, for the new atheists offer no ground for the faith that they themselves cannot do without. After all, if human life has been cobbled together
It's a
by
very
mindless,
strong
unguided
position, by the way.
processes, why
Because
should we
the idea of, or the epistemology of, the lack of belief requires the presupposition that you must have a belief. It's fucked up. That's tough. That's tough to get past. That's a tough one.
trust our cognitive faculties and the validity of any belief that they produce, atheism and science included? John Gray gets it exactly right. Modern humanism is the faith that through science humankind can know the truth and so be free. But if Darwin's theory of natural selection is true, this is impossible. The human mind serves evolutionary success, not truth. Well, this reduces all rationality to zero. And far from atheism being great, it seems to me that it is irrational, anti-scientific, and incoherent, even though emotionally its proponents seem unable to take this on board. Now, as the early pioneers of science
Well, because
saw,
one would have to
the
assume
rational
that
justification
your
of science is
rationalization is
provided
somehow
by the
debased
existence
by
of the Creator, who created not only the
the
universe but the human mind
denial
that studies it.
of the faith.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. All things were made by Him. That makes perfect sense to me as a mathematician. Science is important But it has its limitations. It cannot answer the questions of a child. What are we here for? What is the meaning of life? Nor can it tell us whether literature or art is good or bad. Hence, an atheism that insists that science is the only way to truth diminishes human beings. This is very obvious to many of my Russian friends. We thought we could abolish God and retain a value for human beings, but we found we couldn't.
I would argue that there's a deep
Do away
distinction
with the
between
God, ladies and
eradicating God
and you can do
and
away with the nobility of human beings
no longer
endowed
believing
with all
in
the
God.
potential of hearts and minds made in God's image. You also do away with their freedom. You are left with a mindless, unguided process that somehow threw humans up at its endless lottery to exist without ultimate hope for a tiny moment, only to be crushed by the same blind forces that produced them.
That's a very
freedom
self-fulfilling
that.
logic, by the way, right there. I would
Another
take the
evidence
position
of the
saying.
greatness of God
And it goes with
consists in
Hitchens'
the ordinary
point
freedoms that
of
we
the
often
need.
take for granted. Here's an influential German atheist thinker, Jürgen Habermas, and he says this: Christianity and nothing else is the ultimate foundation of liberty, conscience, human rights, and democracy, the benchmarks of Western civilization. To this day, we have no other option. We continue to nourish ourselves from this source. Everything else is postmodern chatter.
Everything
It
else
was Christianity.
is postmodern chatter.
We're going to do it is Destiny's going to ask questions. The Christian worldview thing, what just happened before, let's pretend it didn't happen.
We found our moderator, boys,
Destiny, go ahead and take your question. And if it leads to where we
ANGELTHUMP.
just work, great. But let's have a fresh restart. So Destiny, go ahead.
Okay, this is how I would like to do this discussion. If you don't like to do it, I acknowledge that, and that's
Now,
fine.
your opinion does not matter.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Darth.
Okay,
Yes,
well,
Emily, there's
we don't
definitely...
wanna hear
Be
how
not
the debate's
atheism.
gonna
Okay,
go.
I'm
Either
not
ask the
talking.
question
I'm
or
talking.
So the rabbit hole, or the Arbit Zero, would be a good way to describe the many levels and layers of the obfuscation. So yes, because there's so many different stories, and it really refers back to the concept that conspiratorial behaviors are covers. They're cover-ups. They're red herrings. They're many-tiered and many-leveled. And so when you used to refer to going down in the Arbit Zero, it was about unveiling and finding all the different levels and layers. And in the case of the obelisk, I would say it's actually looking up at that same concept from the bottom upward and seeing the control structure at the top. And this is as good a time as any to talk about the obelisk that I offer each and every one of us to reach out a hand to our friend and neighbor to help them out of that mental prison. That mental prison being something that we make for ourselves, that in essence I have termed the obelisk. That's the name of it. Because we see it as the power structure in every major country on the planet, in every major city. There is a representative physical object called the obelisk. And at its top is a disassociated, disconnected item called the ben-ben, which is a pyramid, essentially. A four-sided triangle that sits on top of the obelisk. And the obelisk is a funnel. And that funnel feeds all of the control functions and all of the stabilization and all of the currency of life up to the disassociated, disconnected ben-ben. The world holds up the ben-ben. And that's the prison of our mind. We don't have to be there. We don't have to hold up the ben-ben. It's completely in our mind. So if you can, reach out to a friend. Reach out to your neighbor if you see them struggling with that. And invite them to step out of that imaginary cage. It's open. It doesn't even fucking exist. And when you step outside of it, the obelisk comes crashing down. We can kick it to the corner and make it into a doorstop. And believe you me, it's about ideas. It's about concepts. It's about the communication. Because when you don't have the communication, we can't even pay attention to what that obelisk is, or know what it is, or where the Arbit Zero it goes, or how to jump down that hole. And Alice's fall down into the rabbit hole, into another world, of the unknown and the unexpected. Well, I think we're living in a time where we are falling in that Arbit Zero. And then the only way out is to be able to know how to say bigger and drink from the bottle that allows you to not shrink and eat from the correct side of the mushroom. It's all interrelated. Because controls on our thought, these things happen subtly.
Darth, if Darth doesn't want to participate in the discussion
Now
this
you're
way,
talking to me right now.
Actually, you don't want to engage there, Steven.
Question or get the fuck out.
I thought I was asking the question. Are you getting lost?
Don't say how it's gonna go. Ask the question.
Okay, I'm good on that. So,
No,
Darth,
you're not.
if you want to have this conversation, I want
Thanks
to
for
move
the
through
smarmy.
point by point rather than me asking a question and then you giving me
I'm
a
not
20.
hearing a question.
Bring up your
Okay,
point.
my
Bring up your
question
point. Bring up
is,
your point.
can you justify your presuppositions without talking about the whole history of your Christian faith? I want you to justify your presuppositions. So, for example, you interpret the divine word of God by reading it in a Bible. How can you trust your senses there to lead you into some kind of like ability to perceive words on paper? How can you justify that
Okay,
presupposition?
sir, you're asking more. You're asking
Yeah, that
more
was a little bit
question.
low.
Okay,
it's
listen.
a compound
Yeah,
question
you
with a
need
lot
to
of
listen,
meandering.
Destiny. Yeah. Now, how do I
So what is
justify?
the main? So, Darth, he's asking you to justify it, but in a, I think, Destiny, correct me if I'm wrong, in a way that doesn't
Justify child pornography.
the entire. Okay, mute them. Destiny, I think you're trying to say, can he explain it without explaining the entire Christian worldview? Correct.
I just want to know how he can trust his senses. That's
Right.
my basic question. Justify that
So
presupposition.
there you go, Darth.
How do I trust the basic reliability of my sense perception?
Yes.
In virtue of God has ordained that mankind, insofar as we don't have a major defect in our senses, has basically reliable sense perception.
How do you know you don't have a major defect in your sense?
Why? How would I know?
So are you telling me you don't know? You're basing your
No,
entire
no,
worldview on a sense that you
do-
can't justify?
No, I do know because
No.
God has revealed
Yeah.
it.
How do you know that God is
That's
revealing
what he's
it to you?
saying.
He revealed it in the Bible
How are you able to read the Bible and trust the words that you're reading?
with my eyes, because
How do you know your eyes accurately give you?
I'm going to explain to you because
He's questioning reality.
The way that I know things is I'm starting
and knowledge
with my
and
absolute.
words.
My absolute is the Christian
He has no
worldview as
argument.
an entire package. Okay.
How do you justify your absolute of the Christian
know
worldview?
by God's revelation.
How does God reveal things to you in a way that you know He's revealing?
By the way,
things?
this is the same
Okay, through His
conversation.
sovereignty and omniscience and omnipotence.
And how are you capable of
As-
perceiving that?
Lennox
How
is
do I
having.
do that? Through the way God constructed this world.
You're not answering the question.
I
He
am
did
answering
actually.
the
And
How
he's
are you
using,
able to perceive
and by the
the
way,
world?
he's using Lennox's same argument.
How do I
that
perceive the
originally
world the
gave
way
us
that
the
God
universities
designed
that
it?
educated the new atheists, gave them the liberty that permits them to propagate their views and the law that protects them as well as the rest of us. And yet Christopher Hitchens insists that the God he does not believe in
Oh,
is
the
a
producers
tyrant
come
and
back.
a bully,
Hello.
as we just
Yes.
heard. I don't actually believe in such a
just
God
one.
either.
Play. Okay.
It is so alien to my own knowledge and experience. But I might point out as an aside that atheism is no solution to tyranny either, as the bloodbath of the 20th century shows only
Say
too
hi,
well.
producer.
But there's another deep problem here. To say that God is not great is a moral statement. To say he's tyrannical is a moral statement, and that must be based on some moral standard. Otherwise, you couldn't distinguish evil from its opposite. But if there is no eternal base for values external to humanity, how can Mr. Hitchens or anyone else's standards be anything but limited human conventions, ultimately meaningless products of a blind, unguided evolutionary process? How can random mutations and blind selection produce any morality at all, let alone the kind of apparently invincible morality that justifies the new atheist intolerance of religion? John Gray points out that the new atheists defend liberal freedoms without asking where they come from. Hard atheists like Nietzsche, Camus and Sartre will want to know
I would even ask why.
how
Why is that
atheists
necessary?
can rationally justify their absolute sounding commitment to timeless values without implicitly invoking God. They would say you cannot. And Richard Dawkins gets close to hard atheism when he says that in a universe of blind physical forces, you won't find any reason or rhyme nor any justice. The universe has the properties that we should expect if there is no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. But if Hitler or Paul or you and I are simply dancing to our DNA, no one can blame us for anything. All morality is gone. So the claim that God is not great, being a moral claim, dissolves into utter meaninglessness. And here we meet a
I'd have to
strange
disagree with
contradiction.
the fact that that is kind of a
Atheism
rationalization
seems to
of
me, ironically, to deny the one thing that
individual
upholds moral values,
political
that is
movement
justice.
as opposed to
For
social
millions, ladies and
ideologies
gentlemen,
or
there
religious
is no
ideologies.
justice in this life.
It's
And
arguable.
according to
It's tough.
atheism, they will never get it after
tough
death,
point.
since death's the end. So the terrorists who dance to their DNA on the bodies of their victims get away with it. They will not get away with it, ladies and gentlemen. Because here is another aspect of the greatness of God, that he is the ultimate judge of mankind. There is to be a judgment at which justice will be done fairly. In England at the moment, atheists have paid for an advertising campaign where buses carry a message: there's probably no God, so stop worrying and enjoy your life. Why is it that atheists associate God with worry? Is that they fear
Well,
to meet him as judge?
No, because the
They
Bible
don't like
has worry
judgment,
and
but I
fear
can't help
everywhere in it.
noticing sometimes how judgmental they
And
are.
everything is about the fear of life
German Marxist thinker
over
Max
waiting for
Horkheimer
death. So, and
said
the
a very
fear of a
interesting thing.
second coming.
He
and,
feared there might
you know.
not be a God, since then there would be no judgment and no justice. And here we have a dilemma: the problem of my human guilt on the one hand, and my desire for justice on the other. I want justice, but what will justice say to me? And what about God? Is he really the despot they make him out to be? No, there's yet more to his greatness. God is not only the great creator and judge, he's a God of grace and love. And the central claim of Christianity is this: that as an expression of his love, God himself became human. The Word became flesh.
That's an
Christ
interesting
shows us
topic.
as none other the
It's
greatness
actually
of
countering
God.
his own argument.
He made unique claims to be the truth, to be the Son of God, and backed them up by a life and teaching without parallel. But his moral teaching was not his main message. His stated mission was to deal with the moral chasm that separates us humans from God by taking our sins on himself. Ladies and gentlemen, we scientists cannot even tell you what energy is. So don't be surprised if I cannot completely explain to you the deepest mystery of our universe's history, the death and resurrection of Jesus. Yet just as we see the effect of and use energy without completely understanding it, what I do observe is the transformation, the peace, the hope that comes into the lives of ordinary men and women who learn to place their faith, their confidence, their trust in Christ as Savior and God. I see in them and experience in myself a transcendent sense of purpose that atheism does not have, and a hope that atheism does not know. It is here, ladies and gentlemen,
That's a lot of that. You know, that's a lot
the greatness
of.
of God.
He's projecting on that one.
Supremely manifest. Thank you.
If you have questions, please write them on the index cards and pass them to your right.
Well, let me do this in reverse order and see if I have enough time left over to complete my first burst, as it were. I think I gave you fair warning, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers.
So this is his retort.
Dr. Lennox would have to claim to know more than he can possibly know, and he by no means let me down. He knows that he's saved. He knows who's saved him. He even knows who hung the stars in the sky. How he knows this, I don't know. It was a bravura performance in its way, but I don't think if you're going to claim to know who put the stars up there, that you should be citing Albert Einstein. If there's a copy of my Portable Atheist on sale afterwards, and I hope there is, if it isn't, it is available at fine bookstores everywhere. I have several pages of painstaking denials by Albert Einstein that he had or ever had any belief at all of any sort in a personal God or a savior or a divine revelation. He was at pains to repudiate this. He thought it was both sinister and childish as well as unscientific. The furthest he would go would be an illustration of the distinction I labored in vain to make between deism and theism, between a name you might give to a process or an order or a law of nature and the idea of an intervening, vengeful, supervising, caring God.
Abba says, once again, man, the chat is just not doing it today. Oh, there it is. Abba says, wow, amen, true, he will judge. Judgment is coming on the evil influencers, Aaron, being used by Jehovah as one of the hammers falling on top of sexual groomers and racists really hard, exposing them. Well, we can hope. And yeah, I mean, Linux does have a very powerful theocratic point of view. It is very swaying. I don't agree with him on a lot of topics in the sense that he does project his own assumptions into the matter. His presumptions are that because he perceives it, it is real. Because it is agreed upon, it is real. And he disassociates that same logic or denies the same logic to an atheist. And that's where my problem with this argument kicks in, is that I don't think that that's something anybody can do. It's very odd how you can really allow yourself to include an idea, even though you don't agree with it. Isn't that amazing? Because we're complex in thought and behavior, and the world isn't simple. It's not monolithic, monoclastic. It's very strange that folks would think that you have to decide on something and then be angry because you don't want to take you're just waffling because you don't want to have a simple thought about a complex issue. Oh, speaking of which,
how were you able to perceive what God designs?
How I did it? He gave me senses. He made molecules.
How can you trust those senses?
How do I trust that? Because he has ordained that my mind doesn't even question.
Lennox's same argument.
Your mind doesn't question it, so it's unjustified.
No.
Can you repeat
Emily,
that?
yes.
Your mind does not question your senses?
No,
that these
he's
are
only
unjustified?
4 too.
That is exactly what you're saying.
He's
okay,
a beefy
I didn't
one.
say it was justified. Justification has to do with a justificatory path. I can know something even though I may not be able to articulate how I know it. We can know things ultimately because of the way God has ordained things. So, for example, can a child know certain things without knowing how it knows it?
Yes.
Okay, good. Does that child know some things without knowing how it knows it because there's some justificatory path?
Sure.
Good. So I can know things such as my sense perceptions are basically reliable because God has ordained me being made in his image that I don't even question the basic reliability of my sense perception. Now, I question that I might be nearsighted or farsighted or things like that, but that is not the same thing as questioning the basic reliability of my sense perception. So I know that my sense perceptions are basic reliability because the way God has ordained mankind's sense perception and cognition to operate.
If you can presuppose that, then why can I not presuppose
I didn't
causal?
say.
You just did. You gave me a reason for why you presuppose it. Unjustified.
Well, when you say it's a presupposition, what do you mean by that?
A presupposition is something that is
first off, by using that language, he's already denying. He's already trying to leverage by what is denial of the point. You can't. When you're debating someone, it's fine if you want to say, I don't agree. But you don't get to be the arbiter of what is right and wrong in the conversation. That's the whole point of having a conversation. You assume that you have a different point of view. It's not about the other person just being wrong. If you're going to point them wrong, you've got to make the statement of what was wrong and then provide fact. You can't just say, well, I don't agree with him, so you're wrong. While his audience goes, W in the chat, and if we don't say it, he won't win, W in the chat. Yeah, yeah. It's stupid, it's degrading, it's debasing behavior. It's basically taking thought and language and smashing it into the ground for or in favor of a solipsistic, self-absorbed, egomaniacal gamer mindset. Turns into fascism. Because then the only thing that matters is W in the chat. Simferman. Anyways, y'alls. You know what I'm saying? I know you know what I'm saying.
Justifying it because you don't know the words or whatever, but that's your telling me that.
Those fundamental mental states do have a justification. They have a justificatory path in the way God ordained it.
And how do you know that?
How do I know that? Because he revealed it.
And how you?
He's
do you understand
arguing
that you're
for the
moving in
position of the
circles?
Bible, Stephen.
Yeah. It's called epistemological circularity.
And
do you
sticking
object
to
to
that.
principle?
Not
I'm
necessarily,
sorry.
but
I
you
totally
made it
missed
sound
that.
like
Yes,
Okay.
I know some atheists who are way
No,
more Christ-like than some Christians. Yes, I do
here's
as
the
well.
situation.
Emily,
Either you're
many
going to be employing
Christians.
epistemological circularity or non-epistemological circularity.
By the way,
You are-
the idea, and this is how it was put to me once, if you need an invisible entity to look over your shoulder to make sure you do right, you weren't going to follow that God anyways. Because you're really just an adolescent who needs oversight in your behaviors. You're going to do bad anyways. So you don't care about God. You're just using it as an excuse. It's an interesting way to look at it. If you need that God to make you do right, you weren't going to do right in the first place. You know what I'm saying? I have to agree with it.
Circular reasoning yesterday. Was that epistemological circularity
Yes.
or non-epistemological?
When
Okay,
I say that
good.
I have presuppositions that are unjustified and I just assume them to be true on the merit of themselves, yes.
All right, but epistemological circularity has to do with your ultimate authority. Are you aware of that?
I don't think I believe that's true.
That's
loves
how
a good
I'm
scratch.
defining epistemological circularity. It deals
Okay.
with what your ultimate authority is. If it doesn't deal with your ultimate authority, then it is non-epistemologically
Gotcha.
circular. Yesterday, you were not appealing to epistemological circularity, unless, of course, you want to change your mind right now.
No, I believe I was feeling the same thing. Do you have anything else to say
Okay,
insofar as
do you-
justifying
do
your
you-
presuppositions? Otherwise, we're done with this discussion. Do you have any other way to justify your presuppositions?
Okay. No, the justification for anything ultimately that it conforms with the mind of God and how it has been revealed through God's revelation. Now, you stated earlier that
Can you
you
not-
don't
you're not
know
gonna
what
answer my
anything is
question?
possible. Well, what's the question I'm not
Can
answering?
you actually justify any of these God is revealed as divine, whatever, without talking in circles? Can you admit to me that you have no justification for these
No,
presuppositions
the ultimate.
so that we can be done with this discussion?
When one appeals to one's ultimate authority, it is inescapable, circular in terms of epistemological circularity. Now, do you object to that in principle?
No, this is what I just told you 5 minutes ago.
Okay, good. So you don't reject my invocation that the Bible is the word of God in principle. So
Oh, I absolutely do.
What? Oh, okay. Well, what
Because
is
I don't-
your?
Let's talk
Now,
about-
hold on a second. Please don't overtalk me.
Yeah,
Now,
for somebody who was saying, don't overtalk
either
me, don't
you
overtalk me.
object to
That's what he does.
epistemological circularity in principle, or you don't. Do you object to it in principle?
Of course not.
Okay, good. Then, when you object to the revelation of the Christian God, is that it does not conform and cohere to your ultimate authority. Now, what is your ultimate authority?
Basic presuppositional beliefs, things like
Okay,
inductive
That's
reasoning,
not an answer at
deductive
all.
reasoning,
That's
trust in
just
my
a
senses.
reversion back to the
Your
term you're
ultimate
using from
authority,
the beginning that was
is
fed
it
to
the
you.
basic reliability
Wow.
of your cognition?
Sure. That's one
Is
of
it
them,
the
yeah.
Is it the basic reliability of your sense perception?
That's one of them, yeah.
Now,
Reiteration.
is the basic reliability of your cognition, that is the ultimate authority, does it have a necessary prerequisite of causality and laws of nature?
I'm not sure how to answer that. Can you ask it in a different
Because
way?
you don't understand the question.
Yeah, your fundamental basic cognition, does it depend on your brain states?
I would say yes.
Okay, do your brain states have a prerequisite of causality and laws of nature?
Yes.
So your ultimate authority, which are your brain states, and
It is
your
all
basic,
respect for others.
reliability of your cognition, depends upon the prerequisites of causality.
Correct.
Now, okay,
Yeah.
good. How is it the case that there are causal connections between events?
Causal connections are an unjustified presupposition. I cannot justify these two.
Okay, good. So basically, you've now admitted that your reason, which is the ultimate standard and authority by which you reject the Christian worldview, is that your reason, which is the ultimate authority, is grounded in an unjustified starting point.
I'm sorry, I thought we had this conversation 10 minutes ago. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically,
but he's reiterating the fact that you don't have a point, that you've been wrong from the get-go, and you lost the conversation if it's a debate. I mean, it's already done. He doesn't even know he's lost. He doesn't even know what a loss is. He's so solipsistic. He doesn't even know what a loss is. It's hilarious. It's really fucking hilarious. There's no grace in the guy.
That's the only distinction I hope to make, and it was one that Dr. Lennox treated as if it was non-existent, as you may have noticed. Einstein may not be used by those who believe in revelation or personal God. Now, okay, on the something and nothing question, let's stay with science for a moment. Edwin Hubble noticed a few years ago, as many of you will know, that the universe was continuing to expand, and at quite a rapid rate, away from itself. But it was thought by people who were still thinking in what you might call Newtonian terms, that though that rate of expansion was remarkable and rather alarming, it would obviously have to start slowing down, decelerating at a certain point. To the contrary, recently been discovered by very brilliant physicist Lawrence Krauss that in fact the rate of expansion is increasing, and quite rapidly. The universe is expanding very, very fast. Very soon, if we hadn't been around at this particular point in time, there wouldn't be enough evidence left around in the red light shift for us to know that the Big Bang had ever even taken place. We're only picking that up from signals from a long time ago, which will soon be unintelligible. I'm saying soon, using billions of years as an index of time.
As soon as it... I love that.
Not light years, distances. You know what I mean. Distances and times that are rightly called astronomical. What does this mean? It means that, though there is now something, after all, I am here, I do firmly believe. And I'm very happy to see all of you here too, especially those of you who paid for your tickets. It means that very soon there will be nothing. A lot of nothingness is headed our way. It's going to be all over quite soon. You can see it coming. Read the Lawrence Krauss stuff. It's going to explode away. It's going to fall apart. And if, that is, a couple of things don't happen sooner than that, we can already see the Andromeda Galaxy in the night sky. You can actually see it some nights without really the aid of a telescope, headed directly on collision course for our own. We have an appointment.
This is true.
With the Andromeda Galaxy. It's going to crash right into ours. There's something now. Enjoy it while you can. Nothing is coming. Whose design is that, may I inquire? Or perhaps before that, it's very possible that before any of this happens, we won't have to worry about it, because our sun will simply swell up into a red dwarf, our oceans will boil, life on this planet will become extinct, and then the sun will collapse into itself and go the way that millions and millions and millions of other stars have. We can see them imploding and exploding and shooting themselves to death all over the sky as it is. Nothingness, there's a lot of nothingness. So those who want to claim the credit for the something, what deity is going to claim the credit for the nothingness? And who went to all this trouble, this fantastic...
This is a great point. The ideology always claims the everything, but who claims the nothing?
And with the destiny of destruction written in every galaxy, in order to create this one privileged planet with this one very shivering, uncertain, vulnerable primate species on it that's only been here for 100,000 suffering years and has only been offered redemption for 2,000. Look first upon this picture and on that. Look at the absolute extraordinary
agendas can feed the need to cling to these ideas.
On the other, and I don't believe you can possibly say
especially when they validate
any claim
that
of religion
bad idea.
Seriously here. Whatever is the explanation for this, people who say, well, since we don't know, we may as well say it's God, are simply drumming their fingers. They're wasting their time and they're trying to waste yours. Now, on this question of who's boss, and why I don't think the Eternal Father idea is a good one. I'm sure I'm not the only father here. Three children. My job as a father is to get out of their way, to do my best for them, and then make room for them. What if I was to say to them, oh, don't worry, I'll always be here. Not as in, I'll always be here for you, as in, I'm never going away. You'll never see the back of me. You'll never get to say goodbye, Daddy. No, I'll always be here. In fact, I'll be here long after you've died. In fact, I'm rather looking forward to that, because then I can sit in judgment on you.
Yeah.
This is not even a benevolent form of despotism, is it? When you allow yourself to think about it. It's somewhat worse than I was saying before about the way that religion makes people first be terribly abject and then terribly solipsistic and arrogant and conceited.
There's those words.
If it were true that all these things are attributable to an eternal Father who is unknowable except by those who claim, as Dr. Lennox does, sources of information denied to me and many other people, what would it mean at the minimum? It would mean we were living under an unalterable, unchallengeable dictatorship, which might or might not be benign. We've no assurance it would be benign. In my view, benign dictatorships are the worst, but that's another story. It would mean we were subjected to everlasting, round-the-clock surveillance, waking and sleeping.
This is
Never
true.
have a private moment.
We live
Everything
in
we did
Beijing God
and
China.
thought would be known and supervised and invigilated and neither rewarded or punished. Even Big Brother in George Orwell's 1984 couldn't be absolutely sure what all his subjects were thinking. But there was the crime of thought crime. You could be charged with it. Under the divine dispensation, no problem. You're convicted of thought crime before you even had the
Yes,
thought.
Abba. I agree with that 100%.
And how
A
would
lot of
the
these social media platforms with
convict you? No,
influencers are
because
just
he'd already
pure hate and
created you
evil.
full of dirt and sin and wickedness. That's part of the
Position is
design.
unjustified.
Yes,
And
as
the
is yours.
horror of
Correct.
it.
Do we have anything
Okay,
else to
just
talk
like
about?
element of it
Well,
is
hold on a
this.
second.
You're
Now, you just
created
said,
sick.
so is mine. Is that an objective statement?
Yes.
Is that a product of your reason?
Yes.
Is your reason justified?
Yes.
In virtue of what?
In virtue of, I feel like I'm using reasonable statements to deductively point to the fact
Is
that
that objective statement in virtue of causal connections?
Yes,
Okay, how do you know there are causal connections?
because it's presupposed.
Okay, so do you imagine it?
No, I don't. I reject to the idea of imagination as how we
Okay,
justify.
so since you reject imagination, how is it the case that there are causal connections?
Because it's presupposed. Can I ask you a question? Do you
what
think
the-
that
That's not an
when
answer.
you
That's
say-
actually
when
just
you say-
an
I don't want to
evasion.
play this
You
for
say
10 hours.
presuppose-
Can I
no,
ask
no,
you a
sir.
question, or are you going to ask me a million more questions?
You're not going to talk over me. You're not going to bulldoze over me, dude. Okay?
I'm not. You're the one bulldozing.
You're not.
I don't want to run down this
Do not
path, this
overtalk me, or
fallacious
you.
path.
Okay. All right. Your server muted. Please do not overtalk me. Okay.
He got muted.
To that point. Hold on a second. Let me unmute him. Now, stop overtalking me. Now, you stated that your reasoning.
Boy,
is
this
the
guy
ultimate
Darth
authority
really was giving it
by
to
which
him.
you reject the revelation of the Christian God. So your reasoning is the ultimate authority, but your ultimate authority depends that it is the case that there are causal connections. Now, do you assert that there are causal connections?
Am I only allowed to answer questions for the rest of the time?
Are you asserting that there are causal
All right.
connections?
I think I've proven my point that your
Are you asserting that
presuppositions
there
are unjustified.
Are you asserting that
I'm not
there
going
are
to play
causal
this game,
connections?
dude.
Okay, goodbye. Thank you. Thank you
later.
for your time.
Yep.
See, this is the name of the game, folks, is once they get confronted with their crap.
Once they get confronted with their crap,
like that, but they have a lot of
they
oil
cope
industry there.
with a
If the United
fake
States were to
smile,
go into
and they run
the
away
just
from the
fucking-
accountability. It's kind of a thing.
All right. I think
And,
I got my point. So his goal, and what I wanted to ask about,
You don't need to tell us what you think his goal
But what
was.
his
We
goal
we
is-
were able to figure that one out. But you know what? I kind of want to look at something else here real quickly. Hold on, what is this?
Listen to your fat ass dad on the fucking corner of the couch talk about like the thing is that I can get.
Okay, but do you have sex with the?
Obviously not enough if you're living in that shithole behind you, but and also you're what,
I
40,
don't
50
live
years
in
old?
This
How
is a
old are you?
backup studio of my other studio, but you
You
want to
live
go
in-
there? Is that what it's all about?
You
He's
live
got more.
Rhode Island?
All right, I'm gonna win on that level too.
It's a place you're literally not
You're
even allowed to
winning.
have. You're lucky to live under the table.
Yeah.
What's that?
That place isn't even like a living space. It's not supposed to be somewhere you can stay.
All right, so more ungratefulness.
What are you doing in a
backup studio?
What are you doing in a backup studio at 1 a.m.?
And you're calling it a studio.
Tell you what I'm doing here at 1 a.m. I'm kicking your two faggot ass.
Going to do it is that's he's going to ask questions. The Christian worldview thing, what's this happened before? Let's pretend it didn't happen.
We found it.
Ask the question.
Okay, I'm good on that. So, Darth, If you want to have this conversation, I want to move through point by point rather than me asking a question and then you giving me
I'm not hearing a question.
Okay, my question is, can you justify your presuppositions without talking about the whole history of your Christian faith? I want you to justify your presuppositions. So, for example, you interpret the divine word of God by reading it in a Bible. How can you trust your senses there to lead you into some kind of like ability to perceive words on paper? How can you justify that presupposition?
Okay, sir, you're
faggot asses. That's what I'm doing.
Is that what you're doing right now?
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm doing.
The fuck do you want?
Malik, can you confirm that?
Malik,
All right, Malik, go ahead. These guys are
can you confirm that Dan trying to pay you to fuck him?
What?
Can you confirm the car thing when he tried to buy your car?
For being disrespectful.
I'll apologize for being disrespectful. You apologize for fucking.
There to lead you into some kind of like ability to perceive words on paper. How can you justify that
okay,
presupposition?
sir. You're asking more. You're asking
Yeah,
a
that
more
was a little bit.
question. Okay, listen. Yeah, you need to listen, Destiny. Yeah. Now, how do I
So what
justify?
is the main? So, George, you guys need to justify it, but in a, I think, that's correct me if I'm wrong, in a way that doesn't.
Faggot asses. That's what I'm doing.
Is that what you're doing right now?
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm doing.
The fuck do you want?
Malik, can you confirm that?
Malik,
All right, Malik, go ahead. These guys are
can you
saying
confirm that Dan
lies.
tried to pay you to fuck him?
What?
Can you confirm the car thing when he tried to buy your car?
Contacted you.
What exactly
Me? You begged
is
me.
going
What do you mean,
on?
Bro? Just look at the DMs. Look at our history. You public.
Yeah, and you didn't even say thanks for coming on. That's what
No, I
that's my
didn't say
point.
that. No,
That's
why
fucking
not? Why'd I
disrespectful.
fucking thank you? You're fucking disgusting. What the fuck?
So I was a guest on your show, and your response is "fuck you" because what I've determined because I'm some kind of psycho. What?
Can you explain it without explaining the entire Christian worldview? Correct.
I just want to know how he can trust his senses. That's
Right.
my basic question. Justify that
So
presupposition.
there you go, George.
How do I trust the basic reliability of my sense perception?
Yes.
How do I
In
trust the
virtue of
base
God has ordained
of my sense perception?
so far as we don't have a major defect in our senses, has basically reliable sense perception.
How do you know?
This
you don't
is
have
a
basic
video from
defect in
4
your
years ago.
Why? How would I know?
So are you telling me you don't know? You're basing your
No,
entire
no,
worldview on a sense that you can't justify?
I do know because God has revealed it.
How do you know that God is revealing it to you?
He revealed it in the Bible.
How were you able to read the Bible?
Psycho. What qualifications do you have to analyze anyone?
Well, let's see. 1, people that fuck their daughters. 2, people that abuse their
No,
family.
what qualifications do you have to pass judgment?
This
on anyone?
is
Your
just a couple
family
days
is a
ago.
total disaster. Anyone can see that.
Yeah.
You don't live with your one child. You say if your wife got pregnant, you would take her to the abortion clinic, and you say that publicly. And you're passing judgment on a man who has 6 kids, who thought he was married for 20 years, and is a wonderful father to his parents, despite these rumors that assholes like you say. So, yeah, what is your
Do you have a defeater for the Christian God?
Can you explain what you mean by defeater?
Yeah, if you don't have a defeater that falsifies the Christian God, then your stipulation that our most foundational beliefs are actually
What I'm playing for you folks
is not necessarily
may be
true.
the find of the year.
Yeah, you do.
I
You need
believe
a defeater for the existence of God.
that I have
The
found
existence
a
of the Christian
connection
God is in the case that the Christian God exists.
between Darth.
Unless you rule him out, then in the case that he exists, then your stipulation is not necessarily true. That we start from foundational assumptions.
If my foundational assumptions lead to your definition being incorrect,
And
what is your qualification?
Do you think it's an achievement
What's
to like
your
pump
qualification?
out?
I want to know what your qualification.
How many
is.
of your kids do you?
Mr.
What
Ben
is your
Thor,
qualification? You're an
Well, my
entertainer at best.
qualification-
I
Yeah,
may
you
have
a
found
guest
the
on,
reason why
you
My
should say thanks for
qualification
coming
is-
by, and if they
crossover.
want to come back on, you should say
Or
I'll try to
connection.
get you in. That's how
Yeah,
it
well,
works.
let me think. So my first
But
qualification is I've never,
subsequent to your
and I
rudeness,
don't think
when
my
have
kids-
I contacted you? I'd like to
never
know.
fucked any of my kids. So that's my
When
first
have I
qualification.
contacted you subsequent to your rudeness and me calling it out?
Tweet
When
about
have
me?
I?
well, Ben,
Then in
let
the
me
case
see.
that he exists, then your stipulation is not necessarily true. That we start from foundational assumptions.
If my foundational assumptions lead to your definition being incorrect, then I guess foundationally I would acknowledge that your definition is impossible. Sure.
I'm waiting for a defeater for the Christian God.
I've already applied one. If my presuppositional beliefs
that
are
there is
then that would be the defeater.
And giving me an if is not a defeater. Do you have a defeater?
A bit
I'm going by your definition.
of an agenda.
Your definition was that my presuppositional beliefs
And that the
rule out
argument
the
itself
existence of your Christian God.
has been
Can I please
boiling
finish
for
my
some
sentence,
time on this
please, before
area.
you cut me off? Okay. So you asked me,
And we may
to provide a
actually be
defeater to your
looking at
Christian God
the
after
early
you told me that
origination
my presuppositions were a defeater for your Christian God. So I don't understand why you're asking me for a defeater.
Of a little battle we're seeing now.
Can you please?
And I have to wonder if one of the partners remembers at all.
Your next fallacy, okay? So just let me finish this statement before.
Or if they connect.
What is your qualification?
Do you think
Steven?
it's an achievement
What's
to
your
pump
qualification?
out?
I want to know what your qualification
How many
is.
of your kids do you live with?
What is your qualification? You're an
The
entertainer
voice
at
of the
best.
person.
And when
my
you have a guest
qualification-
on,
Let's see.
you
my
should say thanks for
qualification
coming by.
is-
And if they want to come back on, you should say I'll try to get you in. That's how
Yeah,
it
well, let
works.
me think. So my first qualification
But
is I've never,
subsequent to your
never
rudeness,
fucked any of
when
my
have
kids.
I contacted you? I'd like to
Never
know.
fucked any of my kids. So that's my
When
first
have I
qualification.
contacted you subsequent to your
The point
rudeness?
being
Calling it out. When
that
have
the
I?
conversation has derailed. It was derailing, and it continues to. From a cogent stretch of thought made by brilliant men.
And then you're ordered to be well. So you're created full of dirty thoughts and wickedness and wrong ambitions and impure and foul nature, and then you're told you better cure yourself pretty fast. Otherwise, I won't be answerable for the consequences. This is the worst imaginable kind of
Men who listen to each other,
I distrust those
who
who
gave
wish
each other the grace to have their ideas, their strong thoughts, and came prepared
in my
with
opinion,
intellect and knowledge
the original emancipation
and history.
The first emancipation that humans must undergo is the freeing of themselves from this man-made and mind-forged manacle. It might be asked, why don't I want it to be true? Why don't I wish it to be true? Well, I'll tell you, because once you admit that this despot exists, you will find yourself in the real world, in the here and now, subjected to the rule of man-made power, purely man-made power.
All these strong claims, and only one of us here has a fucking felony record. Isn't that kind of crazy?
Who has a felony record?
All these claims here, only one of us has been arrested for domestic violence.
No, you said I have a felony record. Who has a felony record?
Only one of us here
Darius?
fucks their child. Like, isn't
You
that kinda
committed
weird?
a felony.
Isn't
You
that kinda-
committed
isn't
a
that kinda
felony on
weird?
stream. Tell me what the felony I committed is.
Isn't that kind of weird here that?
Then in the case that he exists, then your stipulation is not necessarily true that we start from foundational assumptions.
Thank you,
My
Emily.
foundational assumptions lead to your definition being incorrect. then
I
guess
appreciate
the
you
foundation
all. You
would
folks are
acknowledge
amazing.
that Your definition is impossible.
I'm waiting for a defeater for the Christian God. What is it?
I've already applied one. If my presuppositional beliefs are the defeater,
And you'll be
then
waiting
that
for a
would
while there, Ben. I mean,
If is not a
Darth.
defeater. Do you have a
Darth.
defeater?
I'm
You'll be
going by
waiting a
your
while.
Definition. Your definition was that my presuppositional beliefs rule out the existence of your
No,
Christian God.
to be
frank,
Can
I think
please finish
there's
my
more to this
sentence,
story.
please, before you cut me off? Okay. So you asked me to provide a defeater to your Christian God after you told me that my presuppositions were a defeater for your Christian God. So I don't understand why you're asking me.
But
for a
I think
defeater.
if you listen to the voices,
Are you using circular
Can you
reasoning?
please?
I think there's more to this story, and I'm going to
What is
dive
your
into this.
qualification?
Do you think it's an achievement
What's
to
your
especially
qualification?
because-
I want to know what your qualification.
How many of your kids do you live with?
What is your
Right now.
qualification? You're an
Well, my
entertainer at best.
qualification- yeah,
And when
my
you have a guest on,
qualification- Let's see.
you
my
should say thanks for
qualification
coming by.
In
And if
LA.
they want to come back on, you should say I'll try to get you in. That's how
Yeah,
it
well, let
works.
me think. So my
Hi guys, I hope you can hear me.
Is this person Grace, Ben's
Is my
daughter?
Audio on. Can you hear me through this?
Oh yeah, we hear you,
I know
Grace.
how loud it is.
She's on her way to LA.
But yeah.
She should have landed already.
Hi. I found a little corner of the airport to
Grace and her father
hide in.
have created
So
an
I have about
atmosphere
an
where the
hour until I
conversation
board my
has been
flight,
restarted
and
by
I
an
just wanted to go
electric
live,
jolt
just because
of
I've
moral
been,
play
like meeting more and more people
by
online in real
inciting
life
the
now.
incels
And
true believers
I don't know whether it's me
to
or
come out
them,
from the darkest corners to attack
but
them for puritanical fear.
essentially, like,
Because Grace
if you as a person would
and her
think that it
father
would be awkward to meet somebody
have
from
convinced the
online
community
in real life, the answer is it is.
that they've committed an atrocious
And I
act.
don't know whether that's because I'm like a
When in fact, it's not they
like
who committed the
I don't know
act.
whether that's because I'm
But they
totally
were
different than how I am
playing
online,
off all
or
this to
because
get
other
the
people
attention
are
to
different than they
drive
are
so
online,
that
but like
Grace
there's something
will have a
like,
platform
it's very, very surreal.
where she becomes
So,
very, very famous. And if you want to talk about educated
Yeah, and I miss my
intellectual,
dad. I miss him a lot.
these people are
but every
playing the
time
most
that
dangerous game
I'm not
because you don't know what's real and what's not.
with him, I kind of feel like I have to be independent to prove that I'm not,
Because this game,
clingy or whatever. And so I'm like cold to him.
it's long.
So
It's long.
And in the case that he exists, then your stipulation is not necessarily true that we start from foundational assumptions.
Because this is
If
4
my
years ago.
foundational assumptions lead to your definition being incorrect, then I guess foundationally I would acknowledge that your definition is impossible.
I'm waiting for a defeater for the Christian God. What is it?
I've already applied one. If my presuppositional beliefs are the defeater, then that would be the defeater.
Giving me an if is not a defeater. Do you have a defeater?
I'm going by your definition. Your definition was that my presuppositional beliefs rule out the existence of your Christian God.
what is-
Can I
could you
please finish my sentence,
Yeah,
please, before
sure.
you cut me off? Okay. So you asked me to provide a defeater.
What is your qualification?
Do you think
Steven?
it's an achievement
What's
to
your
like pump
qualification?
out?
I want to know what your qualification.
How many
is.
of your kids do you live with?
What is your qualification? You're an
Well, my
entertainer at best.
qualification- yeah,
and when
my
you have a guest on,
qualification- let's see,
you
my
should say thanks for
qualification
coming
is-
by. And if they want to,
And I think we can leave it there. I think we've seen, and I think I've portrayed the differences in the language, the differences in the argument, what we're losing from the conversation, and the manipulation involved in some of these things, and some of these long cons and behaviors that some folks would be so involved in down here in the Smurfville, they don't even realize that somebody has come back to haunt them because they already smashed them. Now, whether or not these folks all know, that's still to be found out. And trust, I will. You know, I come with the receipts. So let's hop in the corner, right? All right. So, what did we learn today? Well, we learned that the language of communication takes eloquence, it takes education, it takes intellect, it takes some kind of ability to engage. And if you don't allow for that engagement, well, you're not going to actually take part. And who we see today? We saw Emily, and we saw Abba, and we saw Lita, and I saw Ben, and we saw many people out there, although they were, rolling through to see what we were talking about, because they'll come back in the replay, I'm sure. And in any case, I want to thank you for being here. It's always a great pleasure to have you. And at the end of the day, when all of us are here, learning about these things and taking part and engaging with the subject and recognizing that there's more than just a limitation, that there's more of these concepts and ideas that you can allow yourself to have. More than just a little box that someone might have you be stuck in. My friends, you don't have to sit there. You can take your hand, you can reach it out, and be pulled out of that mental prison that you are sitting in, that you make for yourself. Because, my friends, just like the flowers who drop seed and pass the pollen to the bees who carry it on the breeze, one at a time, it's done one at a time. And frankly, at the end of the day, all we can do, when it comes right down to me and you, the only thing we can do, and you can say it with me now, if you really want to. If you see someone in trauma, if you see someone in trouble, if you see someone missing the point, if you see someone locked into a mental cult, if you see someone losing their way, if you see someone sad, if you care enough, just send the very best. Be that flower for others. You see someone about to fall. You see someone crossing the street or buried in their phone or computer. My friends, you know what I'm about to say. At the end of the day, there's really nothing else we can do but look at someone across from us and say, look out! Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate that you took the time to hang out with me today on such a heady subject. And thank you for being really awesome folks, really smart folks. And don't forget that if you can, smash the button, it's free. Likes are free. But more importantly, what's not free is the fall one takes when you don't tell someone when they're about to take it. Be kind to others. Have a wonderful day. Be the best of you. And most of all, look up.